Okay, let's wait for the mayor to be, Pat, you ready? I'm ready, sir. All right. I want to call this August 5th meeting of the Mount Airy Town Council to order. It's my understanding we've got some scouts in the audience. If they'd like to come up, we'd be glad to have them lead us in the pledge. I see we have both Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, but if you don't want to come up, you don't have to.
All right.
But those of you who are in the audience, this is your big opportunity.
Especially if you're from 1191.
Okay? There we go. All right. Let's stand while these guys lead us in the pledge.
Please join me.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we got some presentations, Mr. Mayor. They were here a minute ago. No, there's okay.
A couple months ago, about 6-7 months ago, I received an email from Dr. Chris Coleman and Ben. I'm going to spare you your last name. You want to say it? Galecki. And they had a great idea to bring some fireworks to Mount Airy. I do get a lot of emails and a lot of great ideas, but not always do they pan out, not especially as something as large as what you all were planning to do. A month or so later, we had an informal meeting, and again, I thought it's a great idea. 2 or 3 years from now, we'll probably have something going on. This is great. Well, it wasn't 2 or 3 years. It was just a few months later, you two pulled together what I didn't think was possible, and I don't think a lot of people, if they just envisioned it, would think was possible, but you made it possible. You reached out to several other businesses, and thanks to their support, you were able to bring probably what I think most felt was one of the best celebrations Mount Airy's ever had. I'd like to ask you two to join me up here. I'd like the presentation for you.
It wasn't just Chris and I. It took a lot more than just the two of us. And there was a lot of other people that helped. The town really helped a lot. Some of the other sponsors, Say It Graphics, Chrissy, Denise and Rich Fox from Fox Realty.
Fox team.
Yep, the Fox team. There's no way we could have done what happened, for sure.
And the porta potty place.
Yep, SOS porta potties. Yeah. We got a lot of stuff to work on for next year.
Well, we started. And of course, but it took that idea and it took a couple leaders to get it going. You did, and I thank them for their service, and they also have been acknowledged and will be again.
Yep.
What we have here today, the certificate of appreciation to both Ben Golicki. Good. Dr. Chris Coleman. The town of Mount Airy hereby issues this certificate of appreciation to both of you for the founding of a new tradition of an Independence Day celebration for the town of Mount Airy. You notice how I slipped that in.
Yes.
Tradition. The town greatly appreciates your hard work, time, and dedication it took to organize and put together the fantastic Independence Day celebration on July 3rd, 2013 that brought together hundreds of families and friends in the Mount Airy community. You all did a fantastic job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Guys, it was a great event. I mean, it really was. I was when I went up there, I was really, you know, it was like, wow, this is really did a great job.
Actually, one question.
It was great. Yeah.
Keep it on the 3rd?
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I've heard.
I specifically asked people that question. They all said, you know, it's great. We don't have to go to work the next day.
Yep.
And I feel like I've gotten the fireworks out of the way. I can now go do something else on the 4th.
Okay. Good.
All right.
There's no
thank you.
competition. You're the only game in town. I thought it was great.
I don't know if you can do better.
The problems you had were ones you want to have. We had so many people. That, that was the problem, too many people.
And that was the point. It wasn't just enjoyed by the people at the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
People all around, as far as the meat locker, were watching it. Traffic was jammed up back to Harrisonville Road. That's a good problem to have. And every business, let me bring this up too, talk about economic revitalization. Every business that I know of was sold out of their food or slammed that evening. So you really brought a lot of income into the town that night. Thank you. Thank you. Staying along the lines of patriotism, I can think of nobody that I've worked with any more patriotic than the next gentleman, Robert Camel Rossi. Would you join me at the podium, please? I've also asked Councilman Everidge to join me because Councilman Everidge worked closely with Mr. Rossi in the moving of memorials of two of our I would like to say, 9/11 victims that were from the town of Mount Airy. And you and your son, it was your son's Eagle Project. You worked closely with Mr. Rossi. You moved their tombstones into a befitting place where they should be. I'm going to ask Councilman Everidge to say a few words, and then I'm going to read the proclamation. And this is a proclamation to make you an honorary citizen of the town of Mount Airy. Chris?
You can pay taxes after that's done.
I hope that's not a water bill.
And actually, truth be told, I had the pleasure of observing, but not doing anything. One of the things we love the most about our town is small town feel, and the fact that we have folks like Mr. Rossi, who mentors our youth. And this evening we have a number of scouts with us. My son got his Eagle Scout badge under Mr. Rossi's tutelage with the first Patriot Day ceremony. And I mean, Mr. Rossi taught my son Patrick, about patriotism and organization, and helped him put together a fantastic ceremony. So, I mean, my heartfelt thanks for your mentoring of our youth, and you're truly one of the treasures in Mount Airy that make this a fabulous place to live. So, thank you for that.
In addition, for those of you who do not know, Mr. Rossi has organized the last few 9/11 events in the town of Mount Airy, and they've been wonderful events. I think you're now working with someone to turn the reins over, which is, I know it's a lot to put on, but we appreciate what you've done for the memorial of 9/11 throughout the years. And I'd like to read you this proclamation. Proclamation for Robert Camel Rossi, honorary citizen of Mount Airy, August 2013. Whereas the town of Mount Airy hereby declares Robert Campbell Rossi is an honorary citizen of the town of Mount Airy, and whereas the mayor and council congratulate him on the event planning and organizing of the annual Patriot Day ceremony for the past 4 years. And now, therefore, on behalf of the town citizens, we thank Robert Campbell Rossi for his patriotism, love of country, and the hard work that went into planning the Patriot Day ceremonies, and therefore declare Robert Campbell Rossi an honorary citizen of the town of Mount Airy.
As a resident of Boyd's, Maryland, my neighbors say, how come you always go to Mount Airy? And my answer is, it's a nice place, the people are friendly, and the town is patriotic. Thank you. This is really a treasure.
Thank you very much. I was impressed when we sat down with Bob to cover the transition, just how much work he puts in and all the contacts he has for doing these things. I mean, it's impressive.
He asked some great questions.
Just to hear him sit down and say, well, here's what we do.
Yes,
that was impressive. That was impressive.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the approval of the council meeting. We've got the June 3rd, which we made a few changes to, the July 1st, and the July 1st closed. Does anybody have any changes? Because unless they do, we'll do them at once.
I have one
Okay.
change.
On which one?
Page 2, ordinance 2013-5, dealing with the water.
Sorry, Dave, which day?
Which
July
date?
1st, sorry.
July
Okay.
1st, page 2?
Yes.
Ordinance, go ahead.
2013-5, water allocation allowance ordinance. Yep.
Okay.
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line, all the way at the end. It starts, "It was suggested." I'd like to have that changed by "The mayor further suggested that the vote by the council be by supermajority."
Yeah, that's my recollection as well.
Oh, yes, that is my recollection. That was the mayor's suggestion. I was down one sentence too, and I was going to say, I didn't read that.
Right, it starts
Okay.
up on the fifth line and drops to
Right.
the sixth.
Does anybody else have any other changes?
No.
Bob?
No, but I would make a motion that all three sets of minutes be accepted.
With that
With the
change?
change.
I will second that.
I'm sorry.
You got that, Debbie?
The mayor,
Debbie, I got it.
The mayor
Okay.
further suggested.
I spoke with the mayor and he agrees.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. That was all three, Debbie. All right. Police report. Ah, there we go. Didn't see you back there.
I was hiding, sir. Mr. Mayor, Town Council, citizens and scouts, it was a busy month, obviously, for us with the carnival, the opening of the congressman's office. The feedback I've received has been very favorable, no complaints from anyone, not even the troopers, which is good. As far as criminal activity, again, we had a mixed batch, and everything from telephone misuse and harassment to theft. The carnival's going to bring things such as civil citations for, alcohol citations to minors. So they were issued as well. I'm personally working on an alleged, it was a delayed response. It was a call for service in town, and we pride ourselves on a very, very quick response. And I'm going to, prove or disprove and fix the problem if there was a problem, but I'm going to look into that. I've also received information, some people soliciting money at the Safeway near the Starbucks. We're going to start handling that unofficially and more or less just uniform presence telling them to leave. If they don't, we can pursue an order of no trespass, which is something more enforceable. We, of course, try to start low and work our way up.
Do we have a no panhandling statute? I think
We have an ordinance that says you can only do sales if you get a peddler's license from town hall.
That's true. The issue here is they're on private property,
Correct.
so we
Yeah.
have to get involved with the property
That's
owner
true,
at that
yeah, I
point.
guess if it's private property, then
Yeah, the order of
Walmart or
no
whoever would have to,
trespass.
and they probably don't mind.
No,
Moving
no.
it-
That's actually very simple.
It's actually impacting their customers, so they should mind.
Yeah. No, I mean, they probably don't mind getting,
Oh,
okay, good.
Yeah, the order of no trespass is very simple. I mean, it's
Yeah.
actually just something on letterhead, a couple sentences identifying them, the specific property will be given to us, and then, of course, if they show up again after they're warned to not do it, we have that official notice, and we can enforce that on the spot. So,
Okay, good.
It'd
Now,
really be up to
if they
them.
move from property to property, is it something where you have to go in and talk to each property owner and get something new like that, or is it sort of like a blanket where if you,
Well, the order of no trespass would be a specific address. I mean, if they continue to go from property to property, I mean, borderline disorderly, some more catch-all charges.
okay,
And that's probably what we expect to happen, that, we'll kick them out of one spot, they'll move on to another. But, I mean, we'll do what we can do to obviously get them out and keep them out, because it is bad for business, it looks bad, and I believe some people even said they felt intimidated by it, and obviously we can't have that. So, I personally assigned Trooper Roadheaver to that. That's kind of my style of doing things, instead of just telling the whole group, whenever you get a chance, do this. I mean, I assign a trooper. They make it their own. I can monitor it, and, they can either take glory in their success or hear me when they don't do a good job. But they'll stay on it until you're satisfied, I can assure you that. So, but other than that, once again, I don't know if it was traditional for the carnival coverage to have all the troopers there, but I definitely think, for a safety standpoint, for visibility, this carnival is, if not the biggest in Carroll County, it's definitely up there, and I wanted to have adequate coverage for that. So I assigned all of our resident troopers on a staggered schedule, kind of modified to where one would start a little earlier and monitor the parking lots as people arrived, and of course, a couple to.
Yeah, the coverage.
I saw,
coverage was
yeah, I
great.
saw a good trooper presence.
I was going to say, the couple nights that my wife and I were up there, I mean, there was probably about 3 troopers walking around, and you definitely saw a presence.
My wife commented about walking through the parking lot that she felt so much safer with the troopers.
Did any of you guys take a turn in the dunk tank?
I'm going to say, I mean,
Hey,
personally, I didn't.
Next year, next year,
There was
join
a
us.
trooper night one
You know
year, and I'm
what?
sure they wouldn't mind having you guys again.
I'll personally do it, and I'll order the other guys.
If you do it,
It's fun.
if
It's
you
fun
do
fun.
it, you shorten our length.
No, we put them on a different night.
You put me on the coldest night, no doubt.
We'll give you a different night.
That's okay, though, I mean, but all in all, a very, good, fair, aggressive group of troopers that you have here. Excellent report writers. And, I'm hoping, that you're pleased. I sure am.
Sergeant Kelly, I just want to say 2 things. One, did we clarify that the incident we're investigating, so we may have some neighbors from Sterling Glen watching? The incident was in Sterling Glen that we're
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It was in Sterling
We're following
Glen.
up on the Sterling Glen
Yeah,
incident.
and let me just, my means of investigation is relatively simple. I didn't get a chance to do it today. They had me in an acting bear commander capacity. Our first sergeant's father passed away yesterday, but I'm going to get to it most likely tomorrow. When a trooper is dispatched to anything, we have a complaint control card, and that card basically captures the details of the incident, who the complainant is, the victim, their contact information, the type of crime, and then the time it's received, the time it's dispatched, and the time a trooper arrives. It captures those 3 specific times. So if and obviously we prioritize calls as well. We have minimal manpower, so we're going to have definitely so many supervisors for troopers. That ratio has to be met every shift. We're never going to have a case where we have 1 trooper working the entire county. That will absolutely never happen. I mean, we have minimal manpower, and obviously there's some other, depending on the nature of the call, we can have support from, really anybody. If it's real bad, Sykesville, Sheriff's Department, whatever. But,
Including the Sheriff's Department.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And that's, the more high priority calls, we call category 1, obviously crimes in progress. But with that said, I'm going to retrieve that complaint control card, find out exactly who called, the time they called, the dispatcher that entered the information in, and the exact time the trooper was dispatched, and, what group was working. I can do a lot in a very short period of time.
Sergeant
I'll
Kelly,
definitely get to it.
I did just want to note that over the past 2 months, working together with you has been fantastic. I mean, all of our issues have been covered. Getting people from Buffalo Road are very happy with the coverage down there. I've received a few emails, and
Very
they're
aggressive
very
there.
concerned. Yeah, so you all are doing a great job. I appreciate your leadership style, and it's working well.
Very good.
I received a call from a citizen about a slow response to an incident on 27. Just passing on to you, he said he called, 911 and was told that, I guess because of vacations, there was no trooper in the town at that point, and it took he said 16 minutes for someone to respond.
In the town, I mean,
Out on 27, if I described it right, it was somewhere along by the Cowboy at Cactus building.
Okay.
His vehicle, I guess, was shot with a pellet gun, is what he's guessing.
Okay.
But he said it was loud enough, he said, that not only he, but the car behind him pulled over. And there was quite some period of time before somebody arrived, so I wanted to pass that on to you. It would have
Very
been middle of last week he called me.
okay.
Well, I'm sure it's
Yeah.
a very similar issue then.
Right,
And that's,
right, and
that's
he
the
said he
second
was
one.
told that because of a vacation, there was nobody actually in Mount Airy at that time, and they sent somebody else in.
Well, I mean, typically,
Be a barracks officer.
I mean, certain things that will take a trooper, even an on-duty trooper out of town, will be court, which drives all of us kind of crazy because we
Yeah,
go
I know
there.
that.
And you just wait for the docket. You just wait for your name or the defendant's name to be called, and that could be kind of lengthy. So that could take a trooper, I mean, that really could hurt coverage all over the county because you have troopers. We basically send the available court dates whenever the trooper's scheduled for day shift. So obviously an entire work group is subject to be in court. But, other than that,
When we investigate the other issue, that should come out as well, so.
Yeah, I wanted to pass that on to
It's
you.
good
You
to
can
know.
see what's
Yeah.
going
and if
on.
there's ever anything like that, I mean, my cell phone's available to all you folks. My email obviously goes to my phone. It's good that I'm always in contact. It's also bad that I'm always in
Yeah,
contact.
thank you for calling me from Canada.
Yeah, I was in Ontario 2 days ago. But, I mean, it is what it is. A 5-minute email to let you know I'll get to it.
It was appreciated.
When I get back, so.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thanks much.
Thank you very much.
Fire company, Bruce, you up tonight?
Yes.
Going to tell us how successful it was. I will say that the council made more money this year in the dunk booth than we did last year.
Good. I'm
Not
glad to hear that.
but we did make.
And we
I know we're
I
always-
officially want
we're
to
always
thank
slow
you
night.
all for participating
What's
in
a
that
Monday night?
activity
We're
and
slow night.
allowing the citizens of Mount Airy to take out their frustrations on all of you at the thing there, although I tried to get you in, but I missed. So, whatever, but yes, and I'd like to thank all the citizens for the support of the carnival. The weather was good, and it was one of our better carnivals. Preliminary numbers look real good, so we're very, very happy with that. Incident report for July, rescue calls, we had a total of 74 in Carroll, 54 in Frederick, 4 in Howard, 4 in Montgomery, for a total of 136. Fire calls, we had 9 in Carroll, 15 in Frederick, 3 in Howard, and 2 in Montgomery, for a total of 29 fire calls, for a total of 165 incidents for the month of July. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Next on the agenda, we have Commissioner Rothschild, and I think Chris was going to go first. Do you have to set something up?
Yep, I think that's the plan.
Okay, all right, well, while you guys get set up,
Oh, we're doing
I just want to mention, I see that Commissioner
Excellent.
Blaine Young from Frederick County's come in tonight.
Welcome, Commissioner
They're
Young.
Commission President,
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Welcome to Mount Airy. Well, you've been here before, so we appreciate that, thanks. Commissioner from the other side is going to be talking to us now. And while we have a few seconds while they're prepping that, Camp Night, August 10th. Camp Night coming up. And I leave these little notes here for me lest I forget. The next town council meeting, unless there is, will be the 9th, because the first Monday of the next month will be
Labor Day.
Labor Day. So I'm assuming nobody has any issues with that. We always do that. And now we'll turn it over to Chris, who's going to give us a few minutes, and then Richard's going to talk to us. Did Chris bring his own projector?
Yes, he did.
We had to borrow
Thank
it
you.
because the regular one wasn't working.
Regular
Okay,
one's
so-
on. I can see it.
Oh, Chris, I'm just gonna do one more thing.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Don't look at it, everybody's gonna get dizzy. Okay. I really miss modern technology.
You're getting me dizzy here, Heather.
I know, I'm sorry.
It's like playing one of those 360 3D games.
It's a little crooked. I'm trying to make it, I'll just hold it.
Nothing is crooked here at Town Hall. Watch it.
Oh, there we go. I'm good.
All right, so tonight, I'm going to start out briefly by introducing the effects to the town on the rain tax, and then Commissioner Rothschild is going to speak a little bit more in detail. Just as a brief introduction, especially to the folks at home who might be listening, if you remember a few months ago, we had an increase in our water rates. Well, the increase in the water rates were necessary to bring up the water department to break even. In years past, the previous councils had let the cost of supplying water and sewer grow to a point where what we were charging you for water and sewer wasn't covering it. We're now break even. And we know the council is very well aware of how upset folks were about the cost increases. The rain tax, frankly, is frightening. So, we'll get a little bit more in detail about what we're doing here today. Next slide, please. All right, so from acknowledgements, we've already been working with Richard Rothschild, our county commissioner here for District 4. We've also had a meeting with C. Paul Smith, who's a Frederick County commissioner, Monica, the Mayor Rockenberg, Monica, our town administrator, and Dick Swanson, our water and sewer commission. They've all contributed to some of this material. So these are the folks that are researching a lot of the information for us. Next slide. So this is a brief introduction on what we currently understand. So I'll readily admit that there may be some things in here we don't understand, we're going to miss, or I'm going to miss. Commissioner Rothschild has developed quite a lot of expertise on the issue, so he'll back us up and provide some additional information. But perhaps more importantly, this is about what we're trying to understand, what we don't yet understand about the rain tax, because the rain tax is going to have or could have a significant impact to how much money we're going to be forced to pay for yet another unfunded mandate from the state. The intent here, understand the community and the council's opinion about the rain tax. Then based upon partial information, because that's what I have this evening, I expect a community, or I hope for a community and a council discussion about where we want to go next. Next slide. The responsibility for the content right here is mine. The folks who contributed to it may or may not agree with my position. Ironically, and I know there's a bunch of scouts here in the audience. I'm a scout leader myself. I've been a scout leader for 8 to 10 years. All right, I believe in protecting the environment. As scouts, that's one of the things that we're very, very, feels very strong about. But by the same token, I don't think we can afford yet another unfunded mandate. So the state has basically come down and is going to tell us, hey, you're going to have to pay impervious surfaces. When you see the effect of how much money this is going to cost, you got to start to ask yourself, what's the state trying to do to us yet again? Now, I mean, it's fine that the state's got this idea and wants to save the bay. We're all for that. But, they've got to come here and explain to us, or I think they need to come here and explain to us, look, this is how much money we're going to put out in a time where the economy is still in difficulty, and there are a lot of other competing needs like fire protection, roads, police, and more importantly, education. So when you combine those two things, I'm not for this rain tax. Next slide, please. All right, so House Bill 987, signed into law April 2012, that's called the rain tax. It establishes a system of stormwater remediation fees and a local watershed protection and restoration fund. Now, if you read the legislation, they don't call this a tax. The way the state wrote the legislation, they're calling this a fee. But, frankly, if it's coming out of your pocket, it's a tax. It must be implemented by counties and municipalities that are subject to this National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. It's known as NPDES, and that's required by parts of the federal code. Now, more gobbledygook, and I actually looked up gobbledygook. It really is a word in the dictionary, or at least if you go to Google and type in gobbledygook, you'll get a definition, right? I may refer to MS4. A lot of folks say, hey, this is about MS4. MS4 just means it's a municipal separate storm sewer system, all right? That's MS4 is the storm water management systems we have in town. Now, the two phases. Phase 1, that's the unincorporated areas of, say, Carroll County, the unincorporated areas of Frederick County. Phase 2, that's the incorporated areas. That's Mount Airy in particular. Next slide, please. So, who's subject? These are the counties that are subject. A lot of these counties have already started implementing the rain tax. And, if you pick up the Baltimore Sun or, say, the Washington Post, people are really starting to get fired up about this, especially the business community. Because you got business communities that are getting hit by $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 for the rain tax. I mean, this is insane. Next one. All right, when? So, Mount Airy, just to kind of set the stage about our town and how we fit into this. Mount Airy helps fund Carroll County for all of our needs. So, actually, one of the things the council will vote on this evening is the Town of Mount Airy and Carroll County agreement. And within that agreement, that describes different services that Carroll County helps the town with for planning and things like this. The town actually pays Carroll County, and I might get the number wrong, but it's about $8,270. We pay the town about $8,000 to help us with this sort, the management of the MPDES sort of needs. It's a really good deal for the county. It's a great deal for the town because it allows us to join forces and spend taxpayers' money more wisely. So 987 says the municipalities are not required. They're not required to implement a stormwater management fee, a rain tax. However, Carroll County has a stormwater advisory group. They've produced a draft report. That draft report basically says that we are going to get hit. So while we don't have to apply a stormwater management tax or a rain tax, it's clear when the new permit process occurs, when our permit, we have to renew our permit for stormwater management, the Maryland Department of Environment is going to levy in these requirements. Wait till you see the costs. Next slide, please. All right, so right now, where do we stand in the process, right? The tentative draft Phase 2 permit. Now remember, Phase 2, these are permits that are going to get levied upon the municipalities, places like Mount Airy. All right? So MDE is required to tell us, all the permit holders, hey, here are the new draft regulations. Now, these were the projected dates of when MDE is supposed to come out with the regulations, and these the regulations are the updates to the permitting process. That's what's really going to tell us, hey, what it's going to cost us. And they've missed all the dates so far. All right, they've missed it for various reasons, but we'll get to that in a bit. Next slide, please. All right, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at in town, the areas in red are impervious surfaces. So an impervious surface is your house, your driveway, your sidewalk, a road, a parking lot. And the rain tax is basically saying, hey, you're going to have to start mitigating your impervious surfaces. Now, let's take this large parking lot over here. When this large parking lot was constructed, folks followed the regulations at the time. They did stormwater management just as they were supposed to do. Now, all of a sudden, the state and MDE has decided, hey, yeah, we know you played by the rules, but we're going to come back and change the rules on you, and we're going to start making you mitigate all this stuff. Now, what is even more challenging for us is we're divided between Carroll and Frederick. So right now, we have information on the Carroll side, and this comes from Carroll County's, their staff. I don't have any information yet on the Frederick County. But where you see red, you should see dollar signs. So this just kind of gives you a broad overview of what we're looking at as far as the amount of impervious surface that we could get forced to mitigate. Next slide, please. All right, now the costs to me are frightening. Now, again, Carroll County, their Stormwater Advisory Group, has estimated what the costs are going to be for the town. And again, just in the Carroll side, not in the Frederick side, just in the Carroll side. So, right now, we're looking at about $3 million over a 6-year period. Now, that's the source of the estimate, is the Carroll County Stormwater Advisory Group estimate. But that's $3 million coming out of this town, coming out of your pocket if you live in town. Now, again, I can't emphasize this enough. This cost, the estimated cost, is going to be a lot greater because we don't have numbers yet for Frederick County. All right, so that's about $485,000 a year out of our budget for 6 years. And again, remember, it's going to go up. Next slide. So, if we assume a flat rate tax per connection, all right, so within town we have about 3,200 residential and 300 business connections to our water system. So if you assume a flat tax, there are a number of different schemes one can use. You could say, okay, businesses use more water, so we're going to use a graduated tax. We're going to hit the businesses harder. And, and that gets harder and harder for businesses, to prosper and survive when you keep hitting them even harder for all of these taxes and fees. But if you just assume a flat rate, we just put it all, flat rate across, we got 3,500 connections. Take the $2.9 million divided by the 35, that's $829. That's going to come out of your pocket for the rainwater tax. But remember, if you live in town, remember, this number's going to go higher because we don't have the Frederick numbers yet, all right? So, again, if you break it out per year, it's $138 a year coming out of your pocket. Oh, and, by the way, don't forget, the flush tax, right? That's the $60 a year you're already paying the state. Next slide. Now, this is just a wag, a wild guess. But, Chairman Swanson and I kind of looked at this and said, let's just wag the idea of what Frederick might cost. If the Carroll side's $2.9 million, let's just wag and say Frederick side of Mount Airy is $2 million. All right, now we're looking at $1,400 per connection. All right, you're going to pay $233 per year for 6 years on your water bill, in addition to what you already pay. And once again, remember the $60 for that rainwater tax. Next slide. All right, so already, yeah, go Scott.
Councilman Evers, just a quick question. Can you go back one slide? The the housing number, you have 3512, and that was what you showed us just prior.
Yep.
Do you know how many homes are on the Frederick side? Is that something that you
No,
can
we don't.
estimate?
No,
Or
we
number of
don't break it.
connections?
That's 60/40 split.
Because you're dividing the amount that you're estimating on the Frederick side. So I didn't know if it was like closer to 5,000.
No, that's the total.
That's the total.
It's
For all of Mount
3,500
Airy?
across Mount Airy.
Okay.
All right. So already, the mayor, myself, our town administrator, we've already started meeting with county commissioners. Again, Commissioner Rothschild will follow up here in just a minute. They've been a great source of information. We've been talking a lot to Carroll County and their staff, and they've been fantastic, been helping us with information. Frederick County, the staff in Frederick County has been fantastic as well. Any questions we send out to your staff, Commissioner, they come right back and they're helping us out. I just can't say enough for the support we're getting from staff. They're giving us as much information as they can. So from a town perspective, we're trying to get out in front of this, and I think from a municipality perspective, we're kind of leading the pack as far as, hey, how's this going to impact us? Based solely on cost, and again, Commissioner Rothschild will elaborate on this, we're starting to see a movement across, and I would hope our citizens who are listening, if you don't want to pay this tax, we really need to start talking to the folks, talking to our representative, talking to the folks in Annapolis and say, this is enough's enough. We just can't afford the way you guys want to run this state anymore. Now, and I say this to the Boy Scouts, the environment's important, no question. But at some point, the costs of doing business and living in Maryland become unsustainable. I understand, we don't like to pay the gasoline taxes, but we gotta, we drive our cars, we need roads and things like that. I understand that folks in town were unhappy when we raised our water rates, but we've got to break even on that. But this particular tax. So suggestions to the council, first of all, from a council perspective, we can join with Carroll and Frederick and the municipalities to try to fight or mitigate this, what I consider an unreasonable fiscal burden. Or, the council can start to process to implement what I consider an unreasonable, unrealistic, and a simply unaffordable tax that's coming in from Annapolis. With that, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Rothschild. Unless there's questions.
Good job, Councilman.
Thanks, Chris. Rich, you got your own PowerPoint?
It is a very confusing issue.
All right.
I'm glad you laid it out.
Test, is this mic alive? It is. Okay, is it okay if I speak from here? Is that going to mess up your audio-video production?
As long as that mic's on, we should be fine. They can
Well, I
see
don't-
your picture's up there.
Okay, all right, let's go ahead. Thank you, Chris. Good job. What I want to do is I'm going to give you the presentation that the state government doesn't want you to see. Okay? Because they're just not, they're not dealing with facts. They're dealing with other ideologies, but not facts. So I'm going to try to get into just the facts on this presentation, try to give you the big picture to augment what Chris discussed just now. I'm going to skip ahead some of this. First, I want you to know that at the county level, we have our own environmental principles. We talk about maintaining and improving the human and natural environment. Well, what's the natural environment? Well, the human and natural environment, one is nature, but the other is our built environment. Our homes, our businesses, our transportation network, our economy, our culture, our heritage, our property. And I want you to know that all the federal regulations related to this command respect for not only the natural environment, but also the human or built environment. And we want to promote the use of our county and our land in such a way that it supports our citizens' health, safety, well-being, our constitutional rights, and the economic viability of Carroll County. Real quick overview, because Chris covered some of this. I'm going to skip ahead here. What did I do with my laser? I had a laser here. Hang on. Here it is. I'm just going to skip through a few of these. It says here that the county or municipality shall have a plan to deal with this. I do want you all to know, though, when you read HB 987, specifically, it states that this has to do with, it's subject to, it applies to county or municipalities that are subject to an NPDES Phase 1 permit. So it's not even clear to me the way this law is written right now that this applies to municipalities within a Phase 1 county that are Phase 2, because all the municipalities are Phase 2 right now. And I saw something in the Carroll County Times suggesting that we had the ability to enact it for all the towns. That's not my reading of the law here. And anybody wants a copy of this, I can make a copy of HB 987 for you. It wants us to collect a fee. A fee is different than a tax because a fee is supposed to be, there should be a nexus between the fee and whatever it is that the fee is supposed to control. An impervious surface, Chris already talked about, it's any surface that doesn't absorb water, basically. And the only exemptions right now are government and volunteer fire departments, for any of our firemen out there. The fee can be set with a flat rate. It can be graduated based on the amount of impervious surface. I'm going to say something right now. Setting the fee based on the amount of impervious surface does not create a nexus between the problem and what we're regulating here and taxing or feeing. Because the real issue that determines the amount of runoff is not the total square footage of impervious surface, it's the percentage. If I've got a 1,000 square foot townhouse on a 2,000 square foot lot, I've got a 50% impervious surface ratio. If I've got a 2,000 square foot house sitting on a 4-acre lot, I have an impervious surface ratio of about 1.5%. That's what determines how much runoff there is, because the water that comes down a house in a rural area is just going to go down the downspouts and get absorbed by the surrounding land. The law states that property owners must have an appeal process. Now, what we did here at the county level is we simply said, well, first off, as you know, Frederick County put a 1 penny tax in for every parcel of land. What we did, we said we're not going to implement any tax. We had to figure out a way to one-up Frederick. Just kidding. We just took our capital, we had capital funds of $20 million we were already using to address this problem. We just put them into a fund called a stormwater remediation fund in an effort to be good actors with the state and show them that even though we're committed to the environment, we're not going to just tax for the sake of taxing. Now, how did this come about? I do want you to know what happens in the world of politics, which can be very ugly, but I was down in Annapolis when this happened. And what really happened here is officials from some of the urban counties, they didn't want to take responsibility for raising their own taxes. So they asked Annapolis to mandate it. This would give them the opportunity to raise taxes on their citizens while maintaining plausible deniability. And I'm going to quote myself, and I said, what we have in this room, we have officials that don't want to take responsibility for their actions. So what I said is, what we have in this room is not a lack of taxes. What we have in this room is a lack of integrity by officials that ran for office and now refuse to take responsibility for their actions. If I'm going to raise your taxes, I'll raise your taxes. I'm not going to ask somebody else to force me to raise your taxes so I can claim it wasn't my fault. I don't operate that way. I take responsibility for my actions, and I think everybody in this room that's an elected official feels the same way. The role of the county versus town, I already mentioned it only applies to Phase 1 counties and towns, so it's not clear to me that the county could even implement a tax or a fee inside of any of our towns right now, the way HB 987 is written. And even if we impose something, the way the law is written, the towns have trump power. They can trump us. So if we say we're going to implement a fee of $50, the town could say that's too high, that's too low, or we don't want any fee at all. Ultimately, the town has authority which trumps the counties. I want you to know that. That's the way HB 987 is written. There's also one other exemption, by the way. It says that counties or towns may establish a program to exempt properties able to demonstrate substantial financial hardships as a result of the fee, but the bill does not define what a substantial financial hardship is. Now, there's a lot of hoopla over the tax. We're going to pass the tax, we're not going to pass the tax, but that's not even the issue. Because the issue is the activities that underlie this. Every county and every town in Carroll County has an NPDES permit. The county has a Phase 1 permit, the towns have a Phase 2. Unless you stop the spending, you're going to be forced to raise taxes at some point. It's the activity which drives taxation. I always say people running for office, I said, when somebody tells you they're running for office, don't worry about what they're telling you. If they're going to lower taxes, ignore them unless they tell you how they're going to cut spending. The point is, we haven't done anything yet to cut spending, which means it's going to continue to drive cost up for the towns and for the county, which will eventually lead to tax increases, if not under this current administration, under future administrations. So what are our options? Our options are we can comply and cry. That's what the state wants us to do. We could consolidate permits, and I think this is unlikely for a variety of reasons. First, we have Phase 1, you have Phase 2, and there's other implications I'm not going to get into right now. We could try to comply in a way that's consistent with county objectives and values and seek agreement from the state, and that should say in a way consistent with county and town objectives, because I do believe working together there'll be a way to get more bang for the buck. I'll talk about that before I wrap up. Or we could assume an adversarial position if it becomes necessary with the state. Now, I'm going to tell you, there's some problems with the state approach. Let me just say this in advance. Suppose you were having trouble putting your child through college. You needed money to put your child through college. You say, well, we got to do everything we can to put the child through college. So you have your wife go, and her job is to search in the trunk and glove box of the car for quarters and nickels. And your 22-year-old son has already went through college. His job is to check under the mattresses. And another friend of yours, his job is to check the sock drawer. See what I'm getting? And you might find a quarter here and a nickel here and a dollar there, but the bottom line is those are efforts in futility. You might give a few dollars worth of quarters. They're not going to put your son or your daughter through college. Well, that is what the state is doing with respect to pollution. We're ignoring the mother lode, and we're looking in sock drawers. We're looking in glove boxes. We're looking in consoles. We're looking underneath seat cushions for pollution while ignoring the mother lode. And the mother lode of the pollution coming into the Chesapeake Bay right now is the Conowingo Dam. Okay? Now, when this dam was built, it was 120 feet deep. Now, it's 3/4 of the way filled with sludge, nutrient-rich sludge. And every time there's a violent tropical storm, there's a scouring effect. It disrupts that sludge, and it shoots through those dam locks. Hundreds of millions of tons of sludge go through this dam. So while we're spending billions of dollars at the county level, at the county levels, taking pollutants out of the bay with a teaspoon, it's coming through that dam like a million fire hoses every time there's a tropical storm, wiping out all the gains. It is an exercise in futility. It would be like trying to drain your swimming pool with a teaspoon while it's pouring down raining outside. And I will provide evidence using the Chesapeake Bay Foundation that this is a failure, and I will prove it in just a minute. Now, we actually have proof of this. This image here is a satellite photo of the Chesapeake Bay right after Tropical Storm Lee. 19 million tons of sludge in one storm. 19 million tons. The whole there's the dam right there. The whole Chesapeake Bay is brown. That's sludge. But you see, that's just the beginning of it, because that sludge settles to the bottom of the Chesapeake Bay. And anybody know what it does when it gets there?
Kills the oysters.
It kills the oyster, right. It kills the oyster beds, and the oysters are the natural filtration mechanisms, and it kills all the submerged aquatic vegetation, which are critical to the bay's health. Every storm, we wipe out our oyster beds, we wipe out our submerged aquatic vegetation, which renders everything else we're doing, trying to draw pollution out at the cost of billions of dollars with a teaspoon, it renders it all irrelevant and an exercise in futility. Here are some figures gathered by our law firm. Frederick County, Carroll County belong to an organization called the Clean Chesapeake Coalition. It is 7 counties committed to finding a cost-effective way to clean up the bay. Here are some figures from the law firm they gathered. I think a lot of this data come from the U.S. Geological Service. Here is this is the annual tonnage, Chesapeake Bay annual total nitrogen load sources for nitrogen in tons. There's the Susquehanna River. That's the Conowingo Dam. There's agricultural operations, and most of those that have the greatest effect are in counties that are exempt from the stormwater tax on the eastern shore. They're closest to the bay. There's wastewater treatment plants. There's septic. And Bob, right there on the far right, that's stormwater runoff from NPDES MS4 counties like Carroll. You can see it's about maybe 1% of the total. So we're going to spend $7 billion of your tax money. That's about $7,000 for every family in Maryland that actually pays taxes, to cut that in half. See, we're in the sock drawer, and we're looking under the seat cushions for the college money when we need to figure out a way to raise $50,000 extra money a year to pay that tuition. We can't pay the tuition with this. We can't fix the bay focusing on this. Even if we cut this out by 100%, it would have no effect on the bay. So this is the kind of money that state has us spending. I want you to see the facts. $7 billion on stormwater. I'm just going to use some examples. That's $3,300 to remove 1 pound of nitrogen. $3,300. for 1 pound of nitrogen. Now, just to put that in perspective, a feral cat puts out 3 pounds of nitrogen per year in Baltimore City, a feral cat. There's 180,000 of them. That's 540,000 pounds of nitrogen. What's $1.5 billion worth of nitrogen from 180,000 feral cats? And I teased the legislature, but they're still commenting on it. I said, forget this other stuff. Go get the cats. It would be cheaper than this, $3,000 per pound. I don't mean kill them, but round them up and move them. Okay, septic systems, $3 billion. We're going to take out 600 tons a year. 600 tons a year is a fraction of an eyedropper at a cost, again, of $2,900 a pound. Now, we go to wastewater treatment plants. We're going to spend $2.3 billion. We're going to take out 46 tons of phosphorus. That comes to $25,000 a pound. If these numbers seem outrageous to you, then your instincts are right. They are. This is ridiculous, okay? These people do not understand business. They do not understand science. They do not understand economics. And they do not understand something called a cost-benefit analysis, where you got to figure out how you get the biggest bang for your buck. Let me keep going. This is a study from the University of Connecticut showing the effect of impervious surface ratios on water quality. When you get above 25%, you're in a red zone. When your impervious surface ratio is 10 to 25%, it's impacted. And below 10%, you're in a green area, which means it has minimal impact. Anybody want to guess what Carroll County's total impervious surface ratio is?
2%.
It's close, Peter. 4% excluding state roads and 5% with state roads. So within the entire county, only 4 to 5% of our surface is impervious. And yet we've got studies showing that below 10%, you're in a green zone, almost no impact at all. Which raises an interesting question. Why do anything at this point? Okay, there's problems with the law. 2 weeks ago, I drafted, with help of Commissioner Frazier and with help from several attorneys, a summary of 23 concerns that I had with the state regulations and the way the state was promulgating these mandates related to stormwater and whatnot. And I want to read you just some excerpts. I'm not going to read the whole thing up here because it'll put you to sleep. But here's some of those concerns. Virginia versus the EPA. Judge O'Grady noted that since the parties agree stormwater is not a pollutant, this was Virginia versus EPA, the EPA cannot issue regulations directing the states what they must do with it. Quote, EPA may not regulate something over which it has no statutorily granted power as a proxy for something over which it is granted power. So we've got one federal court opinion saying that rainwater in and of itself is not a pollution. And I like to tease people. And I say, well, when does it become a pollution? When it falls out of the sky? When it hits your roof? When it comes down your downspout? When it goes across your driveway? What point does it become a pollution? It does become pollution. See, they haven't answered questions like that. Only 4% of Carroll County is impervious. I talked about that already. I've got some satellite imagery for you. This is smart growth. This is what the state wants us to engage in. This is the Kentlands from, I think, 700 feet. And all these are rooftops. All that gray is impervious surface rooftops. All that gray is roads. It has an impervious surface ratio that exceeds 50%. Yet we got the state saying to us, smart growth, smart growth, smart growth. But at the same time, they're saying impervious surface ratios that are high or bad. So their policies contradict each other. This is Mount Airy, preferred funding area, priority funding area. And you can see a lot of green, a house, a road, but mostly green. I figure the impervious surface ratio is less than 25%, which maybe puts it in that yellow zone area. And by the way, here's what the state defines as rural, as suburban sprawl. This is Taylorsville, where I live. This is taken 1,100 feet. There's a road, there's a house, a driveway, a road. We've got an impervious surface ratio of less than 10%. Why are they attacking this form of growth? This does not create a problem. Let me continue. Continuing on with the 23 concerns. Since Maryland receives funding from the EPA, they are bound by laws under the Federal Clean Air and Clean Water Act. And guess what? There are laws at the federal level that prohibit them from doing things that are harmful to our human environment. Whereas the MDE, Maryland Department of the Environment, Maryland Department of Planning Policies, do not comply with standards required by the Federal Data Quality Act that requires this data to have integrity. They're using computer models, and they're not giving us the data as to how they create these computer models to measure pollution. And they even admit that the computer models are not supposed to be used below the aggregate watershed area. They're not accurate at the sub-watershed level or at the county level. We already know that, yet they're using them for that purpose. The MDE policies do not comply with Section 101B of the National Environmental Protection Act that states that in the process of implementing these federal regulations, they have to do so in such a way that it doesn't harm us. Not just our air and our water, but our economy, our culture, our property rights. I'll skip ahead here. This would amount, as Chris already mentioned, it would amount to double jeopardy for some property owners. Many people spent tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars when they developed their land putting in stormwater management ponds. Now we're going to go back to them and say, oh, we're just kidding. Even though you spent $100,000 to put that stormwater management pond in for that parking lot, we want you to do it all again. We're going to start taxing you now, even though you've already spent money to abate this once. I've talked about the fact that applying fees based on the square footage of impervious surface is not scientifically valid. There's all kinds of other factors such as topology, subterranean geology, quantity and quality of surrounding soil permeability, vegetation, intensity of rainfall, aggregate rainfall, structures that impede or block movements of stormwater or groundwater. None of these things are factored into the MDE's rubric. More excerpts. The MDE and MDP have not successfully addressed the most likely source of bay water quality remediation, which of course is the Conowingo Dam. Next, they have used flawed and misleading models when comparing nitrate loads on things like the septic bill. For example, when they compared nitrate loads of septic systems versus wastewater treatment plants, it's not clear to any of us that they consider things like stormwater overflows. We've had over 3 billion gallons of stormwater overflows in Maryland. It's not clear that they're considering something called infiltration and exfiltration of leaking underground storm pipes, sewer pipes. When you start putting all of these things into the equation, the nitrate loads from septic systems versus underground wastewater treatment plants, it's not clear there's much of a difference at all. And I have given my own name to the MDE's de facto approach. And they're trying to clean up the bay by attempting to do everything, everywhere, at any price. And that's proven to be a failed strategy based on the facts that, number one, the oyster harvest north of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge has fallen to zero. 30 years ago, it was 2 million bushels a year. And 30 years of programs have yielded minuscule improvements to the bay water quality, and I'll show you that data in just a minute. Continuing on. The state has failed to apply sound, verifiable, scientific, and economic facts in putting these mandates together. The state has robbed money from the Bay Restoration Fund to balance its general fund. Whereas Congress has directed the state has an obligation to respect the important role of local government in planning and policy making, they have not respected our role. They have come to us with a baseball bat with mandates, and they have not given us the opportunity to participate as equals as required under federal coordination laws. And finally, they have yet to properly consider the effects of their policies on the human environment in Carroll County and on Carroll County's own governing principles and environmental principles. So can we resist this if we decide we have to? Well, the answer is this. Nobody wants to fight with the state. However, if we are forced to defend ourselves, we do have the ability to expose flawed policies of the state government that will not pass scientific muster, economic muster, or legal muster. So where do we go? Well, first off, each town must decide whether it wants to implement a rain tax. That's up to these good folks here in your town council. I have no authority to tell them to do it or tell them not to do it. But there's also a saying, and I'm getting towards a solution. If you want to mine diamonds, go to a diamond mine. Well, if you want to treat impervious surface, go where it is. We have more impervious surface in our towns than we do in our rural areas. It would probably make sense for us to spend county money inside of the towns where there's more impervious surface ratio. But we've got a problem with the state right now. If we spend county money in the towns, that'll help the town renew its NPDES permit, but they will not let us count any of that work towards the county's NPDES permit renewal. So we need to work with the state legislatures and regulators to try to get them to agree that if we work with the towns to do projects inside the towns, we'll get some credit towards the county permit. Otherwise, they could shut the county down. And that may cost us less money. If the state doesn't cooperate, there may be only two options: raise taxes or demand policies that respect real-world science and economics. From my personal perspective, raising taxes is not an option. Final observations. After decades of mandates and billions of dollars spent on the Bay, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation rated the Bay a 32 on a scale of 1 to 100 a few months ago when they gave the 2013 ratings. A 32 on a scale of 1 to 100. That's after, what, 20 years of working this issue? Maryland's cleanup policies have failed. It's time to approach the problem in a manner that employs sound science and sound economics. And I'm going to quote myself again. The only way to clean up the Bay is to employ a cost-benefit analysis and focus money like a laser beam onto only those projects that will substantively improve Bay water quality. And going all over Carroll County, which is a 4% impervious surface ratio, is the equivalent of pulling nickels and quarters out of your sock drawer and your console and your glove box in an effort to try to pay for college tuition for your children. You're never going to get there. That dog don't hunt. And we need to try to get the state to take a more reality-based approach to this. I would rather take the $20 million the county has, I think the whole Board of Commissioners, and give it to an organization to clean up, start dredging the Conowingo Dam. If we were to dredge that dam tomorrow, and it'll cost hundreds of millions, we would probably see Chesapeake Bay water quality double. Instead of a 32, maybe it'll go to a 62 in a matter of less than a year. But we're wasting our time here. We cannot put together enough pollution abatement working at the fringe margins while we continue to ignore that dam. Okay, that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Commissioner. Since we have President Young here from Frederick County, Blaine, did you want to add anything, or I'll certainly give you the opportunity.
The cold reality, it's Maryland. If you don't have the counties that are controlled by Democrats understand this, you know, they're going to usurp your local land use authority. So that's the hammers that were in Planned Maryland with the tier maps. That's the hammer that's in this. We enacted it because we were in the process of getting our permit. So we taxed everyone 1 cent per property, residential and commercial. That was not the municipalities. It ended up being about 48,000 properties. So the 1 cent generated about $408. We allocated in our budget. That did not mean that we didn't do what we were responsible for. We had went ahead and allocated within our budget. Shannon Moore, I know that some of you all are familiar with Shannon. We started calculating our numbers before any county because we were getting our permit. We told the legislature that the number that we had was $1.5 billion. They said that we were making things up. We said, well, we're using your numbers. I mean, this all starts from the Clean Water Act that President Barack Obama signed. Our governor is complying versus other governors in New York and Pennsylvania and Virginia are questioning it. The chairwoman of the committee, Maggie McIntosh, said our numbers were wrong and said, no, Frederick's number is about 200 million. So we were supposed to be dancing in the street because we were going from 1.5 billion to 200 million. Well, they enacted it, and this was enacted. You know, the sad thing about this isn't new. This was passed 2 legislatures ago. It's just people now are becoming familiar with it because it's kicking in. So this wasn't even passed this legislature. This was passed midnight the last legislature before they had all those special sessions. We were just going through the process because we were renewing our permit, so we knew what the numbers were. Well, neither number was right. The 200 million wasn't right, the 1.5 billion wasn't right. Right now our number is 1.8 billion. So it went up from 1.5 billion. And that's not even taking the agricultural component. Obviously, agriculture is our #1 industry in Frederick County. We're the #1 milk producing county in the state of Maryland. We're the largest land mass county in the state of Maryland, so we've got the biggest bill that there is. So what we were trying to do is make sure that we could get our permit renewed, so they wouldn't usurp our local land use authority. Because if you really watch Planned Maryland and the tiers, that's what this is all about. The state's going to tell you how you grow and where you grow. You know, the days of, you know, I live maybe 5 minutes from here off Barthelow's Road on 2.5 acres on well and septic. That's a historic site. Those days in Maryland are gone. Everything, unless you're grandfathered, it's all going to be on plan service. and it's all going to be a minimum of 3.5 units per acre. That's what all this is about, Plan Maryland, smart growth, the septic bill, and you know, everything that's going on with stormwater. So we're hoping to buy time, and we're hoping that some of the urban areas are waking up, because now their constituents are getting fired up. In Baltimore, the city of Baltimore, their rain tax is more than more than their property taxes with certain properties. Because this applies to all nonprofits, applies to churches. Churches got big parking lots. So we're hoping that that they wake up and that they go back to the drawing board. There was a bill that went through the Senate, which your all Senator David Brinkley voted for it. Unfortunately, my father couldn't come to his senses to vote for it because we differ on these particular issues. And it came out of the Senate that would have put a 2-year stay on it to study some of these issues like the Conowingo Dam, to make sure that the calculations were correct and make sure that whatever was being done was based on sound science. And because obviously nobody wants to waste money and spend money if it's not based on sound science. That bill made it out of the Senate, but then never was even introduced in the House. That would have brought about a 2-year stay. So I can tell you that I'm familiar with all your legislators. They're voting the right way. We have to get some education in some of the other areas. They need to realize that this is a bad bill. It's a bad fee. It's a bad tax. It's bad for Maryland. It's bad for business. And it's just, I think the councilman's, it's unrealistic. It's unsustainable, unrealistic. We calculated ours, if we just did it like a flat, like they do with the flush, it'd be about $580 per property in Frederick County forever, because this is never going to go away. So, we just try to relate it to our residents of what it would be per year if you did it. Now, obviously, what they did, and Commissioner Rothschild is right, it was the biggest gutless move, in my opinion, by the legislature. They basically said, we're going to mandate this, but we're not going to tell you how to do it. I mean, obviously, someone that lives in a townhouse probably wouldn't pay as much as somebody that lives in a shopping center. So you wouldn't do it from a flat ratio. But again, it's just unrealistic. So that's where Frederick County is. That's why we adopted the 1 cent, was to be in compliance so we could get our permit renewed, because obviously the economy is very important, and we've got some movement on the commercial area and even some residential, and we don't want it to stifle that or have them usurp our local land use authority. So if you all have any questions, I'll be more than answer them. But Shannon Moore, again, and C. Paul Smith, our Vice President Board, he took the lead on that. I took the lead on the tier maps. If we can assist in any way, shape, or form in helping you, please let us know. The case that Commissioner Rothschild referred to in Virginia, the firm that won that case is Aqualaw. We've had them since we took office. They're on our payroll in Frederick County. As we're preparing that the other route may be in the court system. Funk and Bolton is a cost sharing with 7 counties, which I believe we all did about $25,000 per county. That's putting this data in there. So no one likes to have to spend money on lawyers. We want the politicians to come to their senses, but that's sorry. As you know, if you can prevent something from going to the courthouse or the courtroom, a lot of times it's a lot cheaper than it is, going through that process. So that's not a knock on a lawyer. My brother's one also, but we're doing it from data. These lawyers are gathering data. They're handling these cases in Virginia. Funk and Bolton is doing the research on the Conowingo Dam. They're arming us with information to go to Annapolis, the legislatures, and say, do you know what you did 2 sessions ago, almost at the stroke of midnight? Because they don't know what they voted for. They don't know the impact of it. They absolutely had no numbers. We had the best numbers of any county there because we're renewing a permit. We told them we estimate $1.5 billion, and they said, no, you're wrong, it's $200 million. Well, guess what? We're both wrong, and it's $1.8 billion. So, all right, thank you very much for giving me a chance to say something.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
I had a quick question for Commissioner Rothschild. When is Carroll County's permit coming due?
I think our permit was supposed to have been renewed a year or 2 ago, I think. So I think we're overdue in the renewal.
Yeah, it's
Monica's saying yes.
it's It's,
Right.
That's where they're gonna get you.
yeah, it's overdue. They're,
And are we,
yeah, it's overdue.
as we've talked before, when you came to town hall and talked with the mayor, myself, and the commissioner, is the 20 million that the county is offering up, is that in lieu of, I guess, raising a fee? Or, I mean, is that a starting point, or?
The $20 million that we had was pre-existing money that we had already budgeted over the years because we knew we were going to have to do something in order to get our permit renewed. So those were monies that were already budgeted. Now, one of the commissioners made a comment.
But the problem is where they're gonna get you, if they really wanna fool with you. It is mandated. They did not give you a choice. We did 1 penny because it's mandated. So when you go for that permit renewal, that is where it's gonna be their opportunity, where they said you did not do what the law said in the mandate, that it said that you enact.
Right.
They don't tell you what it's gotta be.
Yeah.
And
They
they
just
don't
said
tell
you
you how
have
you
to.
gotta do it. They just say you have to enact it. And that's why we did the 1 cent to be in compliance
Okay.
with the letter of
Right,
law.
so- and the important thing for us is the and actually, MDE is not yet, MDE, the schedule I had, that lists when MDE is supposed to come out with the Phase 2 requirements.
Correct.
They've missed all those dates, so we don't know when we're even gonna see a draft. Ironically, because I know it's hard to keep the numbers, Richard, the Phase 1 in Carroll County actually expired 2008. So this is a 2000, actually this report's a year old, so, yeah, it's expired in 2008.
Let me just make one other comment. That one of the commissioners, I think in the media, said, well, we looked at maybe taking a portion of that 20 million and giving it to the towns. Well, that's certainly something that would be politically popular for me to give money to Mount Airy. I'm certain that would play very well in Mount Airy, but there's a problem.
We'll
with it.
take it, thank
But there's a problem it creates, because I've already talked to our hydrogeologist, and he says, I don't know if we can even do enough things at the county level to renew the county's permit on the 20 million that we have. So if we give up a portion of that money to our towns, ultimately it's going to result in the county having to raise taxes in order to have the money to renew our permit. And just so people understand what this means, when they talk about treating impervious surface, the original NPDES permit the county had said we have to treat 10% of our impervious surface. We only have, I think, 9,000 acres of impervious surface in the whole county out of 300,000. Right, we have 300,000 acres total in Carroll, 9,000 is impervious. So they want us to treat 10% of that. Under the old rules, that would be 300 acres. Now, under the new renewal, we're going to have to treat 20% of that, which is 600 acres. And I assume they're just going to keep going. And I'm sure in another few years it'll be 30%, then 40%, then 50%. So you have to understand that one of the things that where I'm in disagreement sometime with some of my colleagues, who I respect, is that they're going to keep going. Even if we figure out a way to close this gap and treat 20%, what happens when they go to 30? What happens when they go to 40? Sooner or later, they're going to break the goose that lays the golden eggs. And I'm already seeing signs of it in some of our towns in this district. In places like New Windsor, we've got restaurants shutting down. Places like Mount Airy, we've got some water-intensive businesses that are in danger of shutting down. This stuff is strangling us, and it's a threat to our well-being. It's a threat to the human environment in our county and town. And that's why I believe we may ultimately, even though we don't want to do this, we may have to take a stand and attempt to hold the state responsible for violating federal regulations that prohibit them from making us do things that are going to be needlessly harmful to our natural environment and our human environment.
Commissioner Rothschild and Commissioner Young, I want to thank you both. It was refreshing to hear that you are pulling our resources. Just so our citizens are reminded, here in Mount Airy, we're very unique. We have to struggle with the challenge of having 2 counties. So it makes it, so when you see us all over the board, it's because we're very unique in the 2-county issue. And thank you both for pulling resources with the other counties.
Thanks, both of you. And to me, the most telling thing was this from Chris's presentation. The counties that are covered, why aren't, where's Calvert County?
There you go.
Where's Charles County? Where's St. Mary's County?
Cecil.
Where's Queen Anne's County? Where's Cecil County? I mean, not that I particularly want them to be taxed, but they're at least on the bay. We're a long way from the bay. I mean, I can understand when you get to the western counties on the other side of the Continental Divide, well, they're not running into the bay, but those guys are. This just seems really arbitrary to me.
Good point.
So thanks for that presentation, everybody. All right, next section on our agenda, we have what we call community concerns, citizen comments. This is a time when if there's any citizen that wants to address the council on some issue, you can come on up to the podium and tell us what's on your mind. Now, if there's something that's later on in the agenda, you know, you can certainly come up and speak now, but I always recommend that maybe you wait until then, so we're dealing with the issue at that time. So anybody wants to come up and say anything? If you do, just come on up over here. Come on up. Just line up on the wall there.
Girl Scouts will get you every
Yeah.
time.
Well, hi everybody. My name is Elizabeth Hushauer, and I'm an Ambassador Girl Scout, and I'm working on my Gold Award project, which is just like the Eagle Award. I am hosting a free concert at camp night featuring local talent, and I hope to see you at Watkins Park, and it's a family-friendly event. And also, my other half of my Girl Scout troop couldn't come because there's only 2 of us, but we are hosting a Dutch oven dessert cook-off, and that's going to be from 6 p.m. to 7:30. So I hope y'all can make it out that night. Thanks.
Thank you.
That would be when, this Saturday
This
night?
Saturday night.
Coming
This Saturday
Saturday
night,
night?
Watkins Park.
Watkins Park, sorry.
Watkins Park.
Thank you.
We also
Thank
hear
you.
that the chairman of Parks and Recs is a legendary Dutch oven cooker. We expect him to.
He lost last year.
Wow.
I still say the apple pie was best.
Mayor Rattenberg and
Hello.
Town Council, thank you for allowing the citizens to just have a voice. And I love Mount Airy. I'm Mary Ann Gaver, and I have been living in Mount Airy for 25 years. I live in Twin Ridge, and we love Mount Airy. And the reason I wanted to address the council is 2 things. As you're aware, today at 3 o'clock near the 4-County Exxon, there was a medevac helicopter accident. I got a call I have twins, they're 19, they work at Rattlewood Golf Course. Thankfully, they were okay, but my heart goes out, and I hope and pray that the people involved in the accident are okay. I was thankful that on the way down 27, heading south, that they were okay, but I'm here to ask for 2 things, is to say, what can the community or town of Mount Airy do for this dangerous intersection at the 4-County Exxon? Another thing I'd bring up, so again, my heart goes out to whoever was involved, but that is expensive, and it's just, there's so much happening. As you all know, if you're heading south, people from 5 directions are, going out, gas, and our dental lab, you have to go down 144, so that's dear to my heart. And another thing, 7 years ago, is that the driver from our dental lab was in a accident and also had to be medevac to shock trauma. So this really hit home for us. Thankfully, he survived, but this was morning hours where there was so much happening there. And then the other thing, so that's the major one. What can we do? Why hasn't something else been done? That is so dangerous. And then the second thing was also for those of us who live in the town, another hot spot, and those of us who have children, or teenagers that learn to drive, it's really hard now. So would be over by Anita's Liquors, right there on that intersection at Main Street and 144. I've seen accidents and then seen near misses there. Also, for our citizens, people want to take their kids to Mount Airy Performing Arts, or I know one time I wanted to use Enterprise, but I'm thinking that is too dangerous to have a car and get that maneuvered there. So I guess, I don't know if anything can be done, or if the state highway, I don't know the avenues. I'm just a concerned citizen, I'm a mom, and I love Mount Airy, and I just wanted to bring up those 2 things. So thank you, but those 2 things, Route 27, where the 4-County Exxon, and then right there at East Ridge Boulevard. So thank you.
Thanks,
I just
Mary Ann.
wanted to bring that up.
Anytime you want to show up and say something, feel free.
All right.
The 4-County Exxon is not in town. That is outside our jurisdiction because right there is where Montgomery, Howard, Carroll, and Frederick all meet right across the street there. So exactly, but it's a state highway, so it would be a state issue because 27 is a state road. The one near Anita's, you know, that one, yes, we can deal with. Yes, we're looking at that.
We are looking at that.
You know, that's the problem that we face there is that's been there a long time, before there was any traffic there. And there was actually a business on that corner before there was even like a light there. So you have a problem.
There was the highs, but.
Well, no, before the highs, that was a, that was the nursery. There was a nursery there before the highs. So there's been a business on that corner,
Right.
you know, accessing the road there since, you know, maybe, I'm sure not before the town was incorporated, but 50 years or so when there was nothing there. And the problem that you have to deal with is that could never get permitted now, but you're dealing with a business that, you know, was pre-existing everything else. So how do you deal with that? So it's a tough issue. We recognize it.
But taking that left, and then some people, it is not only dangerous, but it cuts off business.
Well, there's 2 points I'd like to make. We're looking into the cycling at the lights over by Anita's Liquors. That is we've already sent an inquiry over to the State Highway Administration. And why it's outside of town, what we have done in the past, we've written to the State Highway Administration. They'll go out and perform a study, and they reply back. I know I received a note from, I think, a 3rd grader about the light on Watersville Road where you come out of Shaladon.
Yes.
State Highway Administration did a thorough investigation. They reported back. So we'll do the same with this. I'll forward it on your behalf.
Well, I want to thank you, and I
Thanks.
want to give time for other people, so thank you.
And thank you for the kind words
Thanks.
about Mount Airy.
Thanks. Bill? Can we get the lights back? I mean, so are we done with presentations?
Yeah.
Barney, can you throw the lights on around since we're done with the presentations? There we go.
Cool.
Thanks.
Bill Butts, 103 East Church Street. We're all aware that over the past several years, there's been an increasing interest expressed by local residents in a Mount Airy Community Center. And that project is gaining traction. I want to thank council members Helt and King for accompanying a group of us, a project team that went a little over a week ago and looked at a couple of outstanding community centers that had been recommended to us over in Howard County. I know that there were other council members who wanted to go, but schedules didn't permit it at that time, and we hope to arrange other opportunities when it is available for you. We hope to also visit some very different kinds of community centers that should be instructive for us over in Baltimore County. So we picked up some very, very valuable insights from that. We're at a time right now where there's a lot of pressing issues on the town. There's a lot of expensive issues that you're considering. I've been noticing with great interest the approach that we are taking with the Flatiron Building by bringing in professional expertise, by helping us evaluate and frame that situation and evaluate possible options, do in-depth analysis, and make recommendations to the town. I think we would benefit by taking a somewhat similar approach to a Mount Airy Community Center project. In talking with Barney, who really was at the helm of putting together the RFP for the Flatiron Building, what I wanted to propose to you this evening, and I think we could do it in a month's time, or in time for your next your next council meeting, is to come back and propose to you an RFP for the process of taking a similar approach in terms of professional study and framing the opportunity, analyzing the options involved, and giving us recommendations on a community center. So that's what I'm here to do this evening, is to propose that approach to you. Otherwise, it's a group of concerned local individuals and residents. We're all very passionate about wanting to look at this and try to see, is there a way to do it and what is the best way to do it? But quite frankly, we need some professional help with it.
How much money are we talking about for?
I don't know that yet. Part of the due diligence, Dave, that Barney and I would do is to understand and talk with professionals to understand from a small retainer standpoint, what might it look like? We have the experience of of what it's costing so far and what the projection may be for the Flatiron Building. So I would think we would be somewhere in that ballpark.
But that's why you put out a request for proposal. When you
right.
get them back, you'll know.
Right.
Right, so one of the ideas would be, and I guess I wanted to visit this under unfinished business. There was a notion before a council meeting or two ago, Councilman Blaze suggested during the budget discussions that if there were any monies left over from the state trooper fund, in other words, at the time, we didn't have exact numbers from the trooper, and there was a motion that kind of was thrown out there, and we passed it because, I mean, politically, giving money to the fire department and public safety, you'd never go wrong, but we didn't really have any hard numbers. We all voted yes. Was that an official motion? Did we really?
No,
Okay,
I
'cause
think we just discussed
I,
it,
We discussed it?
I basically threw it out there and asked
to think about what to do with
that any
extra money we
monies
may have.
left over would be
Right, because
passed on to the fire
one of the
department.
concepts here would be, if there were some monies left over, clearly there's a lot of momentum on community centers. Perhaps after the latest audit's done, we could take some of that extra money, if it exists, and move it towards this RFP process, just for consideration. Because, I mean, clearly, there's a lot of momentum on the idea of a community center, and as, Chairman of the Planning Commission Butts points out, the Flatiron Building was a fabulous presentation. I mean, we got a lot out of it.
And also, Larry, I think you were around on Parks and Recs when we did the master plan for Windy Ridge. And we had experts come in and walk us through that process. I don't know how many of you were here.
I was.
But it was very helpful, determining what your needs are and what you can
It's a nice
afford
study.
and phasing in things. So it was very helpful with the Windy Ridge project.
My only question would be, when we met with the Y, they had a substantial number of tools available to them, including, programs where they can punch in data, like, even the exact amount of weight machines you want, and it will calculate how big of a footprint you need, how much space you need, how much they estimate it will cost to build it out, and you can then sit down and play with all those numbers and come up with it. So, when we talked to the Y, they were talking about that, and I'm not sure that we don't need to do something like that first. To at least give these guys some idea to say, look, here's kind of what we're looking for. Because right now, we don't have an idea of what
We
we're looking
could
for.
make that part of our due diligence in
Yeah,
the
do
next
that
4
first.
weeks.
Yeah, so sit down with
Because
those guys and because, they apparently have substantial tools for
Well,
doing
actually, I had
these things.
a discussion with Chris Covell after the second of the centers, and she offered an invitation for me to get with her and take a look at that tool, that very purpose. And we
Right,
would
I
do
mean,
that.
because we need 10,000 square feet, 15,000 square feet, 20,000
Yeah,
square
20
feet.
was the number.
Those are gonna change things
And
a lot.
actually, they're gonna tell us the number. That was very important. And I don't know if y'all received the next steps, because we all, as a group, decided we're gonna take the 5 or 6 steps
Right,
to
we
get
came
us
up with a
there.
list,
And
yeah.
this can be inserted into that step process somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking, before we sent the RFP, we need to have,
To work-
maybe have
work
that
with
done.
With that, yeah.
Question for Barney. The presentation that we got on the Flatiron Building, was that part of the $50,000 that we voted to spend as part of the concept? Yes. So, okay, so are we looking somewhere in the same neighborhood? Or what? I mean, I'm just,
I think the study's going to be a little bit different. Here we have a site.
Yeah, we have no site for this.
right.
Yeah, there's no architectural renderings and things like that, so no cost on this.
There may be some
It's
architectural
far more
renderings.
complex in some ways, but
Yeah, we'd be saying to these guys, here's a bunch of locations, work them all.
That's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work.
So are we looking at?
But through that wide model, what we can do is take what we need, and we can almost find out what's gonna fit at certain sites, and actually,
That
we'll
may
take
rule out
some of
sites.
it will rule out sites. It might say, well, this is the minimum of what we need, but it won't fit
we can try to
here,
get
here,
as
and
much
here.
out of that model as possible.
And then take it
Okay.
further. I think it's a great plan.
Our intent is to bring you the best intelligence we can and the
Yep.
best perspective so that we can look at it carefully.
And I would advise any citizens that are watching or that are here that have an opinion on what they would like to see in the community center, get in touch with either one of the councilmen, the mayor, or Chairman Butts. Let us know. It's very important that we know what you want.
And if
are you finished? Because while we're on that topic, just if I could, I was going to brief the council on the mayor's report, but since the dollar amount was brought up, I needed to let the council know that we did come in so far 60,000 under budget for the police. I just asked the council to keep in mind, certainly I'll lay out the facts, you make the decisions, that we will be looking at a $70,000 loss next year in funding from the county. And on top of that, there's another issue with some reimbursements they're going to expect, and we're going to talk about that a little later. So just something to take in consideration when you make your decisions.
Any more citizen comments?
What was the $70,000 loss for that you were?
They're no longer going to fund half the trooper. This was the last year. So we'll be funding.
All right, ordinance 2011-7. This is the ethics ordinance, which we've kicked around a long time. I will go ahead and introduce it.
I'll
Do we have,
second.
I got a second from
Do you want
David?
somebody else to take a turn on introducing it? Go ahead, Peter.
This is certainly open for discussion. I mean, I can see that in this revision, and I don't know if Dick wants to come up here to brief us on this, but I can see that, you know, I guess my suggestion of limiting it to local counties has been removed from this.
Well, all I meant to
format.
do was to, by redlining it that way, you see both. You see how you had it, which you could vote to adopt. Of course, you know, as we know, that state ethics is not in agreement with that. But it also shows what the language would be, as at least the state ethics is demanding's too strong word, but, you know, feels is compliant. And so I showed that, not that the change has been made, but
Right.
it's a convenient way of showing both
Showing
sets of
both.
language.
So because as I read through this, I was having a hard time understanding this. So as it's written in black here, when it says a statement filed under the section shall include a schedule of all interest in real property wherever located, that's what the state has mandated it needs to say.
Correct.
Okay. I had one other question, or are we
No,
open for
just
discussion?
go ahead, yeah, then we're open for discussion.
When we talk about just above it in paragraph F, we've redlined out for the person making the disclosure and for each of his or her immediate family. Was that pulled out for the same reason?
Yeah,
or-
I'll tell you, I went back, and I forget the exact issue that arose that caused me to want to take a look at it. I believe it was Sykesville's ordinance, which got approved. I went back and looked at it, and I felt that having that at the very beginning of that subsection probably inadvertently broadened the instances in which you would have to report for a family member, because you continue to read through it as Sykesville's did, and that's what kind of cued me
Right.
into looking at this. Down at the bottom, it talks about when exactly you have, and what you have to report relative to family members. And that is, if I can try and find it here.
So it looks to Tom like we were saying it in F, but it was already said
Right.
in
Previous
A1.
slide, yeah.
Correct.
So the question is, it just didn't need to be repeated.
Exactly. And by repeating it, one might read it to require disclosures for immediate family members greater than even the state had intended it. So I did
Right.
recommend
And we
to
had changed
Dick
it-
that it come out.
We changed it to
that
immediate, because I think at one point it read, it was the other term. There's two terms, their immediate family and what was the other term that they used?
Qualified relative or something.
Qualified, was it, maybe, yeah, right.
Relative.
Yeah, qualified relative included your brothers and your sisters, and immediate family was just you, your spouse, and your children, I guess.
The state clarified, and so that gave us the option to put in immediate family, and we think that's the proper application of the state's interpretation of the law.
Right, because last time it came here, it was the bigger term, it wasn't the smaller term.
Right.
And we corrected that.
So that
Okay.
narrows the number of people that our ordinance requires to
Right.
collect and file information.
And I will also say, at this point at least, 2A, well, I guess it's F2A is still in here, which it was my reduction in stock reporting, if I'm reading this right, which was we don't have to report any publicly traded companies unless you hold more than 5%.
Yeah, that's not redlined in here.
Yeah.
Which is,
Right.
Because I think originally they wanted to report like everything, and I said, well, that's, you know, even the SEC doesn't require that, you know.
But the state the state has not,
They may kick that back, is
they
what
may
you're
kick
saying.
that back.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But one point I
So-
want to make before you vote on this is that
Well-
the letter that was, that the state sent that was disseminated throughout the Ethics Commission and to the council and mayor about, what, a month ago? Wants the Ethics Commission to report back in time for their, I believe it's September 12th meeting of the State Ethics Commission. And frankly, in reading the tone of the letter, I got the impression that their patience is running out with us. And that's why the town attorney has given an option in there that should mitigate one of the significant problems that the State Ethics Commission had in passing the law. So whatever your decision is tonight, then the State Ethics, or the Town Ethics Commission will prepare a letter and send that to the state and advise them. And then after September 12th, I believe it is, we're going to hear back from the state. And I say, I think their patience is running out.
All right. Okay. Peter, I'll,
Well,
taking...
one second, Chris, one second, I wanted to finish. So, Tom, it's your interpretation that under 13.5A1, when it talks about immediate family members being spouse and children, that will cover the removal of talking about immediate family members in the disclosure in paragraph F.
Correct, yeah. I
Okay,
thought
so-
it was
You thought it
duplicative.
was, okay, understand. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't pulling something out
Yeah.
that would lessen this.
And
or
we
that
have
would-
changed it
This is the
before,
way
'cause it has a bigger
Sykesville
term in
reads
there.
now. This is the way Sykesville's reads, and they got theirs approved. So I would anticipate that the way it's now written should be approved.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Thanks.
For that section.
For that section.
Taking into advisement what our ethics chair has told us, Peter, I'll move that section 13.5F1A, what Tom has struck in red, we include that. So the section would read,
You mean we include the strikes?
we include the strikes. A statement filed under section shall include a schedule of all interests in real property.
Well, actually, Chris, I don't think you need to, because my motion is this as it is done, which
Okay.
would have the strikes included.
Okay.
Okay, then for the record, how is the statement going to read? Because I just want to make sure that before we vote, how is that statement going to read?
It's going to read with the sections that are striked out will be gone.
Okay, so basically, it is going to read, a statement filed under this section shall include a schedule of all interest in real property wherever located.
Wherever located in
that's-
Carroll?
No, that's not what
That's-
our,
no, that's struck out.
That's
The
struck
motion-
out.
I mean,
Struck
when I
out.
moved this, it's as it is.
He's accepting it,
Black,
red line
you
changes
know,
and all.
the motion, when I move this in, whatever's stricken out is out. We can decide to put it back in.
Right, well,
But that's for the sake of motion.
There hasn't been a motion.
Right, so I want to make
there's
a
been a
motion.
motion and
Yeah.
second to
Yeah, I
accept
moved it and
this copy
seconded it.
on the table.
Oh, there
Yeah,
has been.
I moved it and David seconded it. That's the only way we get the discussion on it.
Right, so now I want to make a motion
It
to
was
Well, we have-
modify.
You want to modify, okay.
But-
first,
Well, we would have to
second,
change our
discussion.
motion, but Chris, what's
No
your
motion.
suggestion?
I didn't hear a motion.
There's no motion.
Yes, there is. Peter made a
Yeah, I
motion
made
to
a
bring
motion.
this in, and I seconded it.
David
So it's
seconded it.
in and we're in discussion, but there
Correct.
wasn't a motion to accept.
Yes. No, there was.
We got two lawyers.
Yeah.
One says no, one says yes.
Actually,
That's
they're-
Okay,
how it always works.
I didn't hear it, Tom didn't hear it,
Okay.
so,
Well,
I heard
well-
Chris say, do you want to take turns?
Introducing it, but it was
But-
introduced
but I
30
heard-
days ago.
I did not hear a motion, so that's okay, but.
Peter made a motion, and I seconded
Yeah,
it.
and just in case we've forgotten, I will make a motion that we accept it as it
Now we
is,
got it.
you know, and that means with the red line's not in it, and David is
And I
seconding
will
it.
second it.
Just to
As
make that clear.
revised.
As revised, yes,
I
as
just
it is
put
written
the
here.
packets.
Yeah, as it's written here, which is the revisions. Now, we can decide to put stuff back in, but to get to discussion, we have to have it out on the
As
table.
revised.
Actually, I know Chris wanted to make a change, so let me get to him
Right, so I'll
first. He
move-
was in the middle of a change before we
Right,
got
so-
to that confusion.
I'll move we modify the ordinance, and again, I'll do this make sure I do this correctly. I'll move we modify the ordinance, section 13/5,
Page number.
F1A.
Okay, I
on
see it.
page 20. So section A would read, "A statement filed under this section shall include a schedule of all interests in real property wherever located in Carroll, Frederick, Howard, or Montgomery counties, Maryland."
So you want to add that back in?
That's correct, because, yes,
Okay.
my rationale is, to ask for a candidate or an elected official in this town to report real property wherever they own, whether it's in China or in Alaska, is irrelevant. That's the rationale behind it.
All right, well, let's include that in our discussion, I guess, as we go around. Scott?
All right, but it's got to get seconded.
Well, I would have, no,
Well,
I've
he would
got
have
the
to
motion on
accept
the
it.
table, so I
That's
would,
right.
so I
You
would
would have to
accept-
amend, you would have to
I would have
amend.
to amend
Accept the
my-
amendment.
I would have to accept the amendment, I guess you'd probably have to second that acceptance, but.
He didn't make a motion, he just.
No,
made
there's a motion on the
recommendation.
floor, we're gonna discuss we'll discuss that as part of our discussion.
So we're discussing your acceptance of all red line changes in the document.
Well,
That
we're
was just-
discussing the motion, and Chris has suggested that I change the motion.
I understand, but that was your motion, was to accept all red line changes that are in the document, correct? That was what you
Well,
said.
no,
Document as
whatever
written.
is crossed out is crossed out.
I understand.
That's,
I'm
because there's actually a red line ad.
I know,
where it says
and that's why I'm
wherever.
asking, because the statement you made in your motion, I just want to clarify, you said, I want to make a motion to accept all red line changes as in the document. So are you saying
Yes.
accept all adds and deletes, everything in the document as it
Yes.
stands? Okay.
Yeah, because some red lines
just
are
wanted to
adds, some are
clarify.
deletes. Okay, yeah, you're correct. I guess my only discussion on Chris on your thing is the state is pretty much already, my understanding, they've looked at that, Dick, and they already kicked it back and said no.
They will not accept that.
They've already said they won't accept that.
Okay.
I'm wondering if, just my thought process, if we kind of go to an in-between and say, the state of Maryland,
They won't accept that.
they won't accept the state of Maryland. They'll only accept every place in the world.
Well, but, I mean, they're an unelected body, and, this, I don't want to get up on a soapbox, but, at some point, we got to be able to govern ourselves.
Well, I guess we're
If I
discussing.
could editorialize for a minute, because we just had a long presentation about stormwater remediation, and I agree 100% with that. We have the same problem here. We have the state coming out dictating something that both the Ethics Commission here, and I know every elected official in town, and the citizens should be equally upset with this, is asking for information that is unnecessary for the town of Mount Airy's Ethics Commission to do its job. And
Thanks, Doug.
one could even make a case that it goes, since it goes far beyond what's necessary, that it's an invasion of your privacy.
Couldn't have said it better
Dick,
myself.
thank-
And
Thanks, Doug.
I've said it many times, this issue is not going to be resolved with the State Ethics Commission. We've had 2 different sessions of the state legislature where there have been attempts to modify this to make it more reasonable. They both failed. And I know I've heard it here earlier that litigation is something we don't want to do. I agree, but it may be possible, or the only option, is to consider that the municipalities, the counties get together, and they may have to go down that road. I mean, we're in a position here where we're dealing with an intransient state legislature and a hamstrung state ethics commission.
Someone
I mean,
has.
and I say, from the tone of their letter that they sent, their patience is running out. And I think one has to seriously consider other options than continually wordsmithing this in a way that we know the state is not going to accept. That's my
Yeah,
editorial.
I'm curious if they're going to kick back my change in 2A
They may.
to limiting your stock reporting to
But
major stuff.
isn't that even tighter than what, was it Hampstead? Wasn't that even tighter?
I
what-
think mine, I got the impression mine might be tighter than whatever that other town was, you're right.
Right. I can't remember what town it was, but I think for some reason you actually went tighter with 5%.
Well, because I wrote mine before we saw theirs.
I don't know if Hampstead was passed. I don't think Hampstead was
think
passed, but
Hampstead
Sykesville was. If I-
Someone's got to take,
Sykesville was.
somebody has
Sykesville was,
got to
but-
take a
Yeah,
stand.
I don't think Hampstead was.
Well, the question is, do we want to take the stand over, I mean, I think we've limited it to some extent right here to the one issue, which is reporting your real property of yourself, your spouse, and your dependent children. So Bob, it wouldn't include your son. He's not a dependent child, I don't think. You may want to declare him as one, but.
And your dad.
You know, is that something that we want to battle over?
Somebody's got to take a stand.
I cannot vote for this. I've been against it all along from when we first started discussing it over a year ago when I came on the council. I cannot vote for this. It is too intrusive. It is nobody's business. That's where I stand. I can't vote for it.
I guess I'm the only one that hasn't spoken. So, I mean, from my standpoint, I think it's absurd too. We are supposed to be working together as bodies, yet we have a body above us that's telling us basically we're not going to take any changes you recommend, we're not going to work with you at all, take it or else. How can you work with somebody like that? Same thing with the rain tax that we're dealing with right now. So I can't really vote for this right now either. If they're going to be unwilling to work with us, we need to go through a different vehicle in which we can work together.
Yeah, one final statement is, if the State Ethics Commission runs out of patience with us, they have the authority to take the Model B, which is for municipalities, and simply say, you are
Just impose it
required
on us.
to do this verbatim.
Okay.
That means all the other changes that they're comfortable with would go out the window, and we'd have a more draconian.
Have there been any changes that they've been comfortable with, or have they kicked back
Yes,
everything?
there were a number of edits that were done throughout the ordinance.
So in the
Yeah,
instance.
but most of those are problems that were in Model B.
Yeah.
I mean, most of those changes were the fact that Model B was just poorly drafted.
Well, yes, and which is another reason,
I mean, they weren't substantive changes, it was just not well drafted.
Some of them did modify the conflict of interest requirements, but, I mean, your statement right there is another reason why you do not want to have Model B.
Being important.
So here's my suggestion, is that if they're going to enforce Model B on us, let them enforce Model B on us, and at that time, we, along with probably all the other municipalities, will bind together and approach the state and tell them that they need to go in a different direction. If they're going to force us into something, then I suggest letting them force us. If it's inconsistencies with Model B, they're going to be reviewed by all the municipalities and therefore challenged.
Pat?
You have some municipalities that have already been approved, such as Sykes, so I'd like to ask Tom a question. Can they sign under protest? Because it sounds like if they don't, it's a great stance to make. I applaud you. However, if you're going to get a worse ordinance as a result, you may not want to do that. Can they sign in
Does
protest?
Sykes still get any waivers?
Well, let me get my question first. Can they sign in protest?
I don't, I guess you could send something to the state ethics and say, here, we passed it, but we don't like it, and it's under protest.
And so what's the state?
Yeah, so what's
I don't think that they
Well,
care.
Well, I think what it means,
I think that
well, it
the-
means two things. One, it sends a message, and it's going to avoid you from getting an ordinance that's a lot worse than what you're going to vote on now.
The other question in my mind is, and I'm not taking sides here, encouraging you to get in litigation with the state, okay? But, you know, if you do pass an ordinance, the question then becomes, do you have standing later to complain about it? Perhaps,
there you
you
go.
might, you may well, but, you know, that, I just throw that out as a question. But, you know, obviously, again, just to reiterate what the state ethics could legally do, they are empowered to go to court and seek an order, what's called a mandamus, which is an order issued to a public official or a public body, to either adopt what they want adopted or obtain a court order imposing Model B upon the town.
So it would have to go through a court process. I didn't know that there was a court
Yes.
process. That would give you another opportunity to challenge.
then I would ask for, ask for increased funding.
Would they have to go to court to impose Model B, or do they have the authority just to do it?
That I don't know. I think they have to impose it by court order, but I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, procedurally, I can't answer that question, I don't know.
Let them do it.
I've kind of already said the same thing.
Let them do it.
I can't vote for it.
Perhaps further legal advice should be taken on this issue in closed session.
I think we ought to discuss legal advice in closed session.
If that's the way the vote comes down. I mean, I'm not,
Would you like to table this to closed session?
well, no, we do have to
we need to
vote on
take a
this.
vote on it.
We have to
Okay.
vote on an open session, so.
You have a
Okay.
motion on the
Right.
table.
Well, I mean, is it acceptable what we're going to vote on? If we take my suggestion, if you take my suggested changes along with the 5% that you have, I think most of us are comfortable with that. Now, we understand from state's going to say no, but that kind of meets what we believe is fair and relevant for the town.
Might be a compromise, as opposed to a flat-out no.
Well, I think they've already passed the no down to us. I mean,
They basically told us no.
they've already said no to that one.
And again,
And if we go a
I'm going
third
to say
time-
this, I mean, if they've already told us no, and then we turn around and we put it right back in front of them, it's almost like we're sticking a thumb in their eye, and we're saying, hey,
But it's
No,
our
we do-
town, not theirs.
We do have and at least in here, which they may reject,
but
is
it's
my
also,
reduced
but it's also the law.
reporting on some other issues, but I'm not, I wouldn't be surprised to see that come back rejected too, but we just don't know.
I mean, Peter, if I could say one thing, I said this the last time we talked about this, I'm going to say it again. We all took an oath, the oath to uphold the law of the state of Maryland. This ethics ordinance, whether we like it or don't like it, is the law. Now, I take Scott's discussion point where supposedly the ethics commission is not working with us. It's my understanding that they have accepted changes along the line.
Yes.
So they may not be the changes that we particularly wanted to see, but they're not staying with the hammer of the law saying, this is what you're going to pass. They have given.
With others.
But with respect to this one issue here, they're not going to budge. I mean, and again, I'm going to go back to, this is the law, the state of Maryland. We've all taken an oath to uphold the law. So, I mean, I say we win the battles that we can win, and we give a little bit of where we're not going to win, and we save ourselves maybe some significant headache of maybe having something worse thrust upon us.
Pat?
Yeah, just real quickly, this was actually advice given to me by another attorney that we probably, or the council may want to consider, instead of changing and saying we're not going to report, instead of doing that and giving actual figures, saying yes or no, or you do not know, as far as investment interest of family members. Yes, he does have an interest. No, he does not.
Well, now but we have limited it successfully to your spouse or your dependent children.
But
Yeah.
it's still,
Originally, it was much greater, it included your brothers, your sisters, your parents. I was just like trying to
That's
get
good.
that.
That's good.
It's ridiculous.
but it
Well,
also
as far
says,
as being, getting too intrusive, just a yes or no answer. At least that would buy you some time.
What you're talking about-
Consider it.
Let me ask Tom, a schedule of a list of real estate.
You can't put yes or no.
No,
We
but,
could-
okay,
we could
but
frame
when,
it,
when we
though,
talk
where
about a
do they have
schedule of
investments, yes or
a
no?
list of real estate, which is
Don't
under
give the list.
F1A, okay, are we saying, I own property in the state of Florida? Or do you have to say, I own a parcel that is, you know, of this size? I mean, the way I read this, when it says a list of schedule, I could turn around and say, I own property in Florida.
No, what it says is
Or-
B, B, you have to look at B.
Okay, sorry,
Says
okay, the nature of the property,
Nature of the
location, okay,
property, the
sorry,
location, the street address,
missed that.
mailing address, and the legal description of the property. That's
Okay.
it. That's what you have to disclose.
I think Bob was up first, though, Scott.
Yeah, well, Scott,
I'll be the lower.
now, see, I've forgotten my point already. This is what happens when you're the
We were
old
counting
guy.
on that, Scott.
When you're the old guy on the council.
Mine'll be good.
My whole issue is the fact that anybody in this town or anybody anywhere can walk into town hall and say, I want Bob King's financial information, and they have to give it up.
And you'll get
That's my-
notified.
That's my whole problem with this.
So
Got
I'd like to call for vote on the issue because we've heard from everybody. We heard the motion, whether
Okay.
they accept this or not. It's in front of us.
Motion that's on the table that we're voting on, I agree, we've discussed it, that we're voting on is as Thomas presented with the red line changes. So what's red line added is added, what's red line crossed out is crossed out. We don't know if this will be passed, because like I said, my change in the stock requirements is still in here. We'll have to see the statement, kick it back on that. My 2 cents, I'm probably gonna vote for it. I just, I'm tired of dealing with this, and I don't think we're gonna get anywhere. And I'd rather not get get the Model B code. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? So it does not pass, 3. And I have no problem whatsoever with the guys who voted against this. For me, it was like flipping a coin.
Now, do you,
And I will gladly support, if we end up in litigation, any funding we need.
Thank you.
now, is it worthwhile using my changes and then seeing if that will fly?
You make another motion?
I guess you can make, you can make a motion to make those changes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
that's
Well, now,
not a
hold
bad
on.
idea. That's
Does
a
this
good
have
idea.
to be, does this have to be reintroduced now that it didn't
Because actually, I
pass?
think it had those changes, when I introduced it originally.
How do we do this properly?
I've not seen it quite in this sequence, but I've never believed that every change requires a reintroduction. So my answer would be no.
But I think when I introduced it a month ago, it had that.
Right.
That Carroll County
That's
Friends was in it.
correct, that's true.
But
So
he's
removing
just-
it was
he's just
actually the
changing-
change.
He's just changing
Actually, the
approval of
motion
the
would have
motion.
changed what was introduced last time,
Yeah, okay.
actually.
So
Okay.
Chris,
So-
make your motion so that Debbie can get it down. And I
Okay.
will second it.
All right, so I move that we adopt ordinance 2011-7 with the following change. Section 13-5, subsection F, subsection 1, subsection A, on page 20, will read, "A statement filed under this section shall include a schedule of all interests in real property wherever located in Carroll, Frederick, Howard, or Montgomery County, Maryland."
All right, I'm seconding that, so we're just putting in that red line. I think we've probably discussed this whole topic enough, guys, so just vote on it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 3 opposed.
So, I'm gonna make this easy. I'm gonna make it real easy.
Okay.
I'm gonna make the motion, let it go back to the state, let them push B down to us or whatever, and we'll deal with it then.
Well, that's what we're doing.
No, that kind of just stops it if everybody agrees to it. We
No, but I
need
mean,
to
that's
discuss
what we're
it.
doing. We haven't
default.
passed it, so
Perfect.
that's what we're doing.
Well,
No,
No.
because they said it just defaults to.
I mean, that's what it defaults to.
well, my report back to the state will simply say that the town council was unable to pass.
Successfully come to terms on the wording of the ordinance.
Our lawyer would like to
As,
give you some
as a
counsel.
perhaps minimizing litigation, that theory, they have asked us the ethics to report by October 1st.
No, actually, we have to have something in so it can get on the agenda for their September meeting.
Well, the only suggestion I was going to say is, would it be worthwhile to, and this is just a suggestion, to maybe minimize the chances of litigation, to get an extension of that and see if they would not send a representative from the state ethics here to meet with this body to discuss in public the issue that seems to divide the state ethics. It's what you would have to do if it were to go into
Arbitration.
court, you would be court-ordered mediated. So may I suggest that maybe we reach out to them and suggest that before we jumping into litigation?
Yeah, sure,
Close.
yes.
Close vote.
I can do that.
Both of them.
It's just a suggestion.
Okay. 2013-4, this is ordinance to amend sections 112.6, continuous non-conforming use,
I will
and
reintroduce.
112.62. Well, actually, that's just, Bob is reintroducing it, and we're just setting a public hearing on it tonight.
Correct.
I would suggest we set it for 7:15 on the night of our next meeting. Does that sound good?
Fine.
For
Might
public
want
hearing.
to go with, might want to go with 7 o'clock.
You'll need more
7?
You might as well address when the next meeting is while you're
I already said that, Debbie.
Oh, I was upstairs getting something.
9/9.
September the
I
9th.
already
yes.
said that. Okay, if you guys want it at 7, I got no problem with
I
that.
would
So it's
I would
gonna be
go
at
with
7.
7.
When did you say it? Did you take that?
9/9.
I did, I picked it up and I announced it while Richard was preparing his thing. I said, I got a couple seconds here while they're doing stuff, and I made some announcements. Okay, so that will be at 7 on that night. Got that, Rick? Now, he emailed me, he specifically emailed me and said, is there gonna be a vote on this tonight, is there gonna be discussion? And I said, no, there'll be a public hearing, that's where you come and discuss. So, okay. So he emailed me and I told him that we would not be voting or really discussing it tonight. Okay, I've still got my, when water allocation's been pulled. I'm looking at the prior version of the agenda, which was in the packet. Okay, Charter Amendment Resolution 2013-3. This is the change to the election information. This is here for adoption. And with that, I want to do 2013-11, which is our election ordinance revisions. That's here for adoption as well. I will move we accept both of them. We want to do them together, which is why we held it. Second, we don't want one to go and not the other, which was why I held off on the charter till this month, because we could have a disaster if we voted on one and not the other, because they are in lockstep. Yes, Chris?
I'd like one change.
All right.
Throughout the documents, we talked.
Chris, Debbie's got one question.
I'm sorry. And Tom, please interrupt if I'm wrong. I think you need to do it separate because one's a charter. Now, for some, I don't know how.
I think we could vote on the two of them at one time.
One's a charter, one's an ordinance.
And one's an ordinance.
Yeah, but I mean, we can,
I'm not sure, you could,
one vote on both of them. We may decide to
As long
split
as
them, but.
you're both gonna vote yea on both, then we have no problem.
yeah, it's if you've got, that's right.
Yeah, well, you're right, but somebody votes nay, if then they say it's because of this one, then we'll have to bifurcate it. But I don't think we're gonna have that problem.
Good SAT.
Bifurcate?
Bifurcate.
Bifurcate?
Yeah, I gotta look that one up, Peter, sorry.
Leave it to him. Tom knows that.
Is that like Flugel binder?
Can we
Tom
vote
knows
3
that one.
2-3 on that word?
That's a good word.
Separate.
Yeah, that's one of those terms
Yeah,
lawyers
gobbledygook.
use, so we sound impressive,
Engineers, we use gobbledygook.
Gobbledygook.
Yeah, that's what we use.
Yes.
So
So we're dealing with the two together at one time, at the moment.
okay, the change I have, the charter amendment,
All right?
it may be in other places. It reads, last page, it reads councilmen. It should not read councilmen. It should read
Councilperson.
councilperson.
Absolutely.
Well,
I'm sorry,
then
where is that?
it's in two places. You got councilman
It's in
and
at
you
least
got
two pla-
councilmen.
Yeah.
Same sentence.
It's in at least 2 places.
Yeah,
That's,
right here at
that's
the
the
end.
current version of the charter.
Right, it
That's
should read
probably
councilperson.
why. So that'd be an additional change that you all would, that
Yeah, yeah.
the move into,
Yeah.
When we make changes, we're trying to pick them, catch them.
Yes.
Okay.
so councilperson.
So
Gender
I will amend my motion that we adopt the Charter Amendment 2013-3 and the Ordinance 2013-4 with all of the
References.
gender references to councilmen to
Agnostic.
be neutralized.
Bifurcated.
Agnostic.
To be changed to council person or persons. Okay?
That's it.
Bruce, does that cause any problems for you? Okay.
Second.
Okay, we got a second from Scott on that. Any discussion on this?
I had just a couple questions for clarity. Page 7 out of 10,
And the ordinance.
2013-11.
I'm talking about the ordinance now.
Right?
Paragraph 10-24, it would be B, and then subparagraph 2. when we're talking about the ballots validly marked in favor of a write-in candidate must contain at least the first and last name, okay?
I'm sorry,
Which one are we?
back up a second.
Yes.
1024.
Page 1024B,
That's okay.
subparagraph 2.
Oh, two, okay.
Page 7 and 10. Gotcha.
Okay. As I was reading this, okay, I sort of was bouncing around, and my question is, okay, and perhaps Bruce may want to answer this. Okay, let's say, for instance, I understand we need a first name and a last name on the ballot if it's going to be a write-in. And maybe I'm deep diving into this, but let's say, for instance, somebody has a name that has
One name.
well, no, what I'm saying, like, okay, let's say we have Richard.
The voter formerly known as Prince.
Let's say we have a Richard. There are several forms of that name. How, I mean, are you only going to accept the first name, last name, or will there, I mean, is it up to the, again, the intent of the voter? I mean, because I read in other places in
Objective
here,
intent.
you know, if somebody said Dick Winters or Richard Winters or whatever, will that vote count? As long as it's got a first name and a last name, or as long as the board can discern that I meant to vote for this person?
I cannot say definitively right now how we would decide that. That would have to be on a case-by-case basis, but it would be I would assume in most cases, we would look for the broadest interpretation to give the voters their best opportunity to make their intentions known.
Well, the
Okay,
law
then,
requires you to
Peter,
follow the
excuse,
intent. Yeah.
excuse me, okay. Then my question would be, would it be smart, okay, now I'm dropping back one page, back to 6 out of 10, where we have struck out 1023, instructions to voters for write-in candidates. Should we, okay, if there is a bona fide write-in candidate that has actually campaigned, because you and I sort of talked about this, I understand what the meaning of this is, to have a pure write-in candidate, so anybody can walk in, but if we've had an individual who missed the deadline date to file, but is running a campaign, should there be something in the ordinance that gives instructions that if you mean to vote for Richard Winters, you need to write Richard Winters?
It would be incumbent upon the candidate to instruct the voters to put their name that way, because the thing is, you could have a write-in candidate start a write-in campaign hours before an election, the day before an election. So there's no way to really codify that. It's really incumbent upon the person seeking the office to specify to the voters how that name should appear. There's no way you can legislate that.
I just wanted to caution back in 2002, and I think that's where a lot of this came from. I was actually very involved in that particular election, and the elections board actually gave examples of how the name had to be written on the ballot, and if it wasn't written that way, they weren't going to count it. Well, Circuit Court overturned that and overturned the election, so regardless of what you write, it's still going to go back to what the intent of the voter was, no matter what kind of instructions you give them.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, okay,
You
so,
can't legislate away controversy.
so I think I understand, but you're talking about Jim Holt.
Yes.
So did people like write James Holt, write
Yep.
Jim Holt?
Yep.
J. Holt.
J. Holt? So
Some
then,
people just wrote Holt.
Right.
And so if it just,
So
so
then
if
my-
it just says Holt, that's out.
so then my question, so then my
And there were
question,
other Holts in town.
Yeah.
so then my question would be, with that understanding, by us saying that you've got to write a first name and a last name, if somebody did a court challenge, would that piece hold up?
I would think so. I mean, the best you can do is draft it. And they'll have to follow the intent of the voters as best they can.
I mean, because if somebody comes in and puts J. Holt, is that
I mean, if you
is that
have-
a first name and
I
a
mean-
last
I
name?
mean, obviously, if John Holt and James Holt are both in town, and they're both eligible voters, you're gonna have, you're gonna have to put John or James. You know,
Understand that.
Putting Jim might not, might be a problem.
Right, but, okay, let's,
And that's only if they didn't declare themselves as a candidate.
Well, there is no formal declaring
There's no
yourself as a
formal
candidate
declaration.
anymore.
There was. It's
Right,
struck
but
out
we've
right
done
now.
away with that because that was the problem.
well, yeah, because if you formally declare yourself, you're
You're
going
a
to be on the
candidate.
ballot.
Right.
But if you, this is for the pure write-in,
I mean, when you have signs all over town, that's. I
It
think the-
becomes,
I think the judge looked
the
at
intent
that
of the voter
in Jim Holt's
can be
case.
discerned
Right.
from that, yeah.
Yeah.
I see that, Rich wants to.
Just a very quick comment with regard to your comment, David. It seems, Rick Blatchford, Nottingham, there's a distinction between a first name and a nickname.
Nickname.
And the law says first name. My first name's Richard. People call me Rick, Rich, other things. So, well, you know it's true.
For the record, could you?
No, I'm not. If I do that, I'll have to say who said it, and that'll embarrass the people that are sitting here. But there's a legal distinction between a nickname and a first name. And what the law says the first name, if it were me, it'd have to be Richard, and it will never be me.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
But the question is, for example, with me, you could say Peter or Pete.
It's your nickname. What's
Well-
it say on your birth certificate?
Says
Or your
Peter.
driver's license?
okay.
Says
I'm-
Peter on both.
That's my
And
case.
not, my name, David. I could be Dave,
David or-
I could be David. If, say, for instance, I was on a write-in ballot and somebody wrote Dave Blaze, are we gonna say because that's not my first name? I mean, that's not what's on my birth certificate. Is that gonna be not
A
counted?
judge is gonna accept it if it's challenged. I mean, judge can do anything. I've seen people lose
I know, I'm
cases
just,
that
I
they
guess what I'm
definitely
trying
have
to,
won.
I guess I'm just
I would
trying
go
to
as far as
give.
Yeah, the problem is.
I'm
how do
trying
you-
to
how
give
do
the
you-
election commission the most, I guess,
Leeway.
the best instructions that we can give them so that at the same time, we're not gonna end up going into court under litigation
Yeah.
for something. It may not even ever happen.
Well, you hope it won't, but the problem that you've got is you have to set a standard. And really, the only standard you can have is, you can't put first name and last name, you can't say anything that could be a first name and last name, or you can't say any nickname and last name, it has to be, realistic.
And the
I mean,
thing is,
practical
you can't
matter is
really
should get-
enforce what the candidate, how they present themselves. Because we don't have any requirement that, if you
Yeah.
want to be a write-in, you have to be a certain, because the write-in should be a free thing, that any citizen can walk
Yeah.
in and put any name in they
Yeah.
want to.
Right.
And he better make sure his signs say David Blaze, and when he's at the polls, he needs to be telling people, make sure you write David Blaze.
Right.
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 But I think,
And the onus is on him to make sure that his voters
I agree.
are voting right. Scott?
I think I appreciate the deep dive, but we're into grass cutting. The fact that, I'm only saying this because most candidates, as we all know, out of all seriousness, when you're gonna run, you're gonna end up putting in your form to say, I'm gonna be a candidate. You're gonna end up putting out
Filling out your ethics.
signs and ethics and your financial disclosure and giving it to Dick and everything, so.
And part of this is making that easier so that we hopefully won't have a write-in
This
issue.
is that small 1% of individuals that aren't going to be a candidate that at the last minute goes, you know what, I want to do this. And the odds are either people are going to know their name and they're going to write their name right, or they're going to have a very small percentage of it.
Hey, Pat,
Can we call a question?
what was Jim Holt's thought process for getting into the race?
Well, it was the former mayor was running unopposed. And so after the election occurred, a lot of
Announcement
citizens
announcement
approached.
night, he
Yeah.
made, he
Yeah,
decided
it was
the next
an
day.
unopposed
Because we had
election,
a-
so.
We had a single night nomination.
Right,
in,
now. Okay.
So that was his thought, right? He wanted
I've got-
wanted
I
the
mean,
citizens to have a choice.
I'm trying to get an idea of why.
I just need to make one necessary change in my initial motion, and that is, when I read it, I originally said Charter Amendment Resolution 2013-3, and it's ordinance 2013-11. I accidentally read the wrong ordinance when I did it. It said 2013-4. because I read the wrong ordinance on my
Right,
sheet.
because that's the one.
Right, so I'm assuming that was my that's my motion, and Scott is seconding.
13, 3, and 11.
And you accepted the amendment?
13, 3, and 11.
Right, and then
I
you also.
seconded.
Right, and you accepted the change.
And right,
Yes,
and the
so
change.
it's still there.
Right, then the change.
Ordinance 13,
I said the wrong ordinance number when I said it before.
You know, when
I read the ordinance names right, but I said the wrong number.
you want ordinance 1311 and the charter amendment.
But before you vote, just when all's said and done, unless it's really close, it's not going to be challenged anyway. So, I mean, we're discussing this, but in Jim Holt's case, it was close. It was close enough that the election had to be overturned.
Debbie?
Unless it's close, you're not going to have an issue.
Debbie?
As the town clerk, and I've worked with Bruce on all this, Bruce came up with the idea, which I absolutely agree with.
That's great.
They're gonna have nominations open for a whole week.
Right, that's to eliminate this problem.
That's gonna, right.
Yeah, the problem was we had one, for those of you who don't know, we had one night, you got together and you had nominations, there was no ability to kind of sit there and go, well, you know, it looks like a weak field, maybe I should run. You know, so.
It might be helpful if the council would permit me, just for the citizens' point of view. We changed essentially 4 things with this legislation. We changed the wording to accommodate electronic voting. So we took ballot out and put votes. And we talked about how we would, a contested vote would be retallied and the tally sheets and things. So all that was put in. So that was one thing we did. We also put in a very minor change. It said we would be responsible for conducting and setting the time and place for a special election.
I remember doing that one, yeah.
That wasn't available in there anyway, if we had that. We changed the nominating period, which right now is a one-day, a one-night nomination meeting. We would open them on a particular Monday. That meeting would then go into recess, and it would remain open for a week, during which time someone could come to the town offices and submit their letter of intent to run. Then we would also, at the next Monday, have the other, reconvene that meeting. We would accept, again, nominations off the floor. We would certify all the candidates that have submitted as being eligible to be candidates. And we would set the slate that would appear on the actual ballot at that period. So we've extended that to a whole week now. And the other thing we eliminated was what used to be called formal write-ins, because that really didn't solve anything, because you still had write-ins. And so it really complicated the process, especially when you use paper ballots, because the periods didn't line up. And so we had a last-minute rush to get ballots printed and everything because of the way the things fit together. And when we looked at it, we said it doesn't solve a problem. I mean, I'll be honest with you, at the time, probably when it was done, people felt better about that, but it really didn't solve anything. And so we removed that and went with the traditional way of addressing write-ins. So that's the 4 things.
All right, well, unless it's a quick question, why don't we let's vote on these, you ready?
Yep. Ready.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that was unanimous.
Wow.
For both.
We really did a good job. Maybe we should do that, no.
Bruce writes the ethics.
All right, we've got a budget amendment, Department of Public Works project, 2013-12. This is here for introduction. I will introduce it, so this comes up next month. Unfinished business, the reduction in bonding at 1304 South Main. I'm looking for my sheet on that. Heather said it would be here to I got it. Here's mine. Thanks. All right. The requested amount is $4,884.26.
Also move.
All right, I will second that we release as recommended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And town-county agreement. Tom, you want to brief us on this? This is...
Yeah, I mean,
Should we recess for 5 minutes?
Sure.
All right.
We'll recess 5 minutes.
We've done that earlier. Yeah, clean up on L2. Want to try and catch Richard before he left.
My butt's stuck to the chair, I can't get up.
we'll see you in a month then.
Microphones are still on.
Sorry, folks.
Oh, the legs. 5-minute recess. off the table?
Yeah, 5 minutes or
Not good.
I just, that was my limit.
That's okay. I understand. Okay, guys, let's get regathered here.
Peter, use your gavel.
I'd have to look at why that is, but other than.
Does anybody ever use that in a meeting?
Right.
People would sit there and play with it.
A little bit of influence there.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's call this meeting back into session. We were at the Mount Airy
10-2.
Taft County Agreement.
I looked at it. It is exactly the same as it has been for the last several years, literally verbatim, with the exception of the numbers, obviously, which are changed a little bit each year. I was frankly looking at it to see if it might address our resident trooper issue. It does not, so it's identical.
That's mine.
Peter, I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, Bob, I assume moving that we accept it.
Correct.
And I'm
As
second.
written.
I'm second as written.
Dick, you have something to talk about on this one?
Yeah, I apologize, I've never read this before, but I'm reading it now. The National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, NPDES, on page 4. I noticed that we're paying Carroll County $8,723 for them to provide extensive support services to the town, to assist the town in complying with the regulations. Don't we all pay out of our property tax and percentage of income tax that ends up to the county money that goes to fund that already? Why is this an additional charge, is just my question.
It's not, it's, the county gives us like 181K. And then as part of that 181K, they take back the 8,000.
Right,
To
so-
handle all of the stuff that we would have to pay for otherwise. But that map, that GIS map, the map of the impervious surfaces and stuff that I presented during, that's like one example of what
Well,
they do for us.
my question is, why would we have to pay for it when my taxes as a citizen here already did fund all that? In other words, why would there be a separate charge? And I know it's not a lot of money, but I'm just bringing it up as a curious question.
It's accounting.
It's a double, we're paying twice. Once through my taxes, because none of the money that is funded that has to do with stormwater management or remediation or anything that Carroll County, the 20 million he's talking about, and all of that other stuff, that's collected from Mount Airy residents, but not a penny of it is dedicated to Mount Airy.
Right.
So, this is I'm already paying money for general funds up there to run the administrative side. I'm paying money that is part of the $20 million, and then the town comes out and says, wait a minute, out of my taxes, we're gonna pay another $8,000 so these people can perform a service I've already paid for. Point, you're paying for it twice. But it's not a lot of money, and I don't think it warrants going like this. But I think in the future, you ought to say, why pay for things twice? My comments.
Get some, well, certainly, I would say in the future, get some more details on it. I mean, I tend to think that there's probably extra expense that the county has by the. Huh?
Yeah, but paid administrative positions that are already funded out of the general funds, which are paid for by your taxes and money and property.
But maybe not mine, because I'm in
Right, that's
Frederick
true,
County
not
side.
mine.
They don't provide services for Frederick.
I'm in Frederick County.
Actually,
In the
you're
town, they
getting it
do.
for free.
We get it for free.
Frederick gets it for free because this 8K you're talking about, it's essentially, we are paying the county for professional services. It's all off of Carroll County money, but by agreement, the Carroll County handles the Frederick side of Mount Airy, so they get it for free.
So when.
As a Carroll
my
County
footers-
resident, as a Carroll County resident, then why don't you place a fee or tax on those 40% of the people that from Frederick County for $8,700, so I don't pay twice? My point, that's all.
We did have a councilman once who suggested different taxing on the Carroll County side than on the Frederick County side.
I'm being facetious, that's ridiculous. You know that, but I mean, you know
he
the
wasn't.
point. You know the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Dick,
Well, I mean,
we'll
there's
reach out.
there's some logic to it, it just doesn't work. It's just not worth
Yeah, I got
what it is.
Dick,
All right.
we'll reach out and get an answer to your
Yeah.
question. See if we can explore more, and we'll advise the
Oh,
council.
For a second.
Okay, Scott, you just ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous, Debbie.
That's a good point.
Yeah, no, I certainly ought to look at it.
Peter, under new business, can I ask for an update on Elijah Harrison? I know there's emails flying around, but for a public
Well,
update.
we are gonna see that in our closed session.
Yeah,
Okay.
And I think
You
we'll
got
probably
mine
see it in
here,
the
right?
attorney report, too.
updated.
Yeah, I did, but that I missed because I didn't have the text in front of me. Just
Okay.
from a public,
My copy.
if we could just, from a
Well, I'm
public
assuming we'll get
perspective,
that in the
where
town attorney report, am I right?
Sure, I can throw that in there.
I mean, that was my
We'll wait.
thought, yeah. Okay,
Peter,
Mayor.
one quick second.
Yeah.
I did want to bring up one thing. And it goes back to the additional funds that we had talked about earlier in the year with the state resident trooper program. It does look like we've got about 60K extra. I'd just like to ask the consensus of the council right now. I mean, I'm not asking for a motion, but I'd like to ask the consensus of the council as to what their feelings are about pushing that additional monies towards the fire department.
I mean, I personally don't have any problem towards that. I understand the idea of let's look and see
How
about the
much,
community
how much
center.
money did you want to push? Just,
Well, originally, what we had talked about was whatever the difference was between the state, what we had budgeted and what the state, what the final bill came in, it would get pushed to the fire department.
The idea that it was already in
It was already,
protection-type services and just
well,
keep it in
there's
that category.
just two concerns. One, let's find out how much they were shorted first. I think that would be a part of due diligence on our part before
Right.
we just throw $60,000, because that was the overage. That is, in fact, what you're proposing. I would, and I have been reaching out to try to find out what the actual loss was. I believe Jimmy's going to be getting back to me. And they're in the 30,000 area, so you don't want to throw $60,000 at a $30,000 loss, or you may, I don't know. It's up to you guys.
That's operation budget,
Yeah.
that's not capital equipment.
Bruce, can you come up to the mic, please?
So what do you want to?
Bruce, take off your election chair hat and
Yeah,
put on your assistant chief hat.
No, I gave that a hat up a long time ago, my vice president's hat. What the mayor asked for was the difference in our budgeted amount from the county funding.
What I asked for was how much did you lose this year?
Right. And that amount of what we actually lost from what we requested from the county and what we did not get came to about $19,890. Now, every year, we overspend our budget by $16,290. Now, that's operating funds. That's not paying for a new ambulance that costs $250,000 or the new command vehicle. That has to be paid for out of our fundraising.
So basically, you were shorted about a little over 19,000,
Right.
and you're running a deficit of about 16,000.
That's traditionally what we run on our
But
operating budget.
that's from your budget, but when you were explaining, and I think everybody here, and certainly Mount Airy has always been supported the fire department. Of all the municipalities in small towns, we give 10% of our property tax. That shows you the support you have at this table, and that support hasn't changed. But I think what I had heard, I may be wrong, was that you said you actually received less funding, and that your funding was cut. So I
Yes.
thought they were state cut, and I found out actually the county increased funding by
The county-
3%.
what the county did.
We just ought to get all the numbers
Yeah.
straight before they make a
What the
decision.
county did is they said, we will increase the county funding to the volunteer fire service in Carroll County by 3%. They did that. They give that to the Carroll County Volunteer Emergency Services Association, CCVISA. They then have a budget process that they go through where all the departments submit itemized budgets with budget areas that are not fungible in there. And so they submit those. Well, when all that was submitted, there was more submissions than county funding. And so in order to make it work so that they had money for stuff they thought was more important, like turnout gear and stuff like that, they cut the areas of recruitment and retention and conferences and training. And so our things like our alpha pagers that we provide to personnel, having people come in and pay for them to conduct trainings and things were cut. And that's where that was, recruitment and retention money was $16,890, and training and conference cut was $3,000. So that's where the 19 and change comes from, that we were not able to get per our budget because that section was cut by the county association based on the funds provided by the county to us.
Okay.
And then the 16,000,
290 is the fact that when we take that operating budget, we have additional expenses that we have to cover out of our own generated funds each year, and it runs about that amount of money.
But
So that's extra things.
So I guess the one question I had, because I heard you say 16,000 twice, which was a little confusing, but you have funds that you generate to offset the 16,000. So example, the carnival that just
Right,
happened, you have funds that are going to offset that.
Right.
So are you still telling us that the funds from the carnivals and the breakfasts or whatever you're still at a 16,000 deficit? Or are you saying
No,
that amount is going to go closer to zero?
We will cover that amount
Okay.
with fundraising dollars.
Okay, so that's out of the
Right.
question for the moment. So
And,
you're
yeah.
still saying you're short 19,000 because of the county's
Right, out of the county.
allotment of funding
county-
to
right,
you
out of
and
the
where
county
you had to
allotment
cut
funding.
things?
We normally would have gotten that $19,000, but the county, in order to make it work for all 14 departments,
Right.
something had to give, and that's what the county association took out.
It's a county
And-
association, not the county.
Right.
and what
That's
was
right.
the, what was
Because
the,
county didn't cut,
No,
but the county association.
county allows the association to manage
Yeah,
the allotment.
that's right.
and what was the, I guess, the 19,000, what was that full amount?
It was $19,890.
And out of that 19,000,
The number you gave me total 36,
Yeah, it comes to
36,000.
36,180.
right, but that's because he added the 16 back
And you
in
added 16 back in.
without the fundraising, so you can't
Well,
count that, he just
Yeah,
said, because it's
whatever,
offset.
before the council, I'm just
Yes.
cautioning for them to look at figures before they allocate money. and
So-
I'll let you
Well,
finish.
David only asked
It's
for
okay.
just to kind of, for a feel for
Yeah.
where people were, whether they supported.
Right.
Do it
So
as the
my
system.
question is, I'd like to sort of poll the council here. What is the consensus about, I mean, making up, with a portion of the 60,000? I mean, I'd be willing to go with the $19,890 because that's what was shorted.
Portion sounds more reasonable.
I would be willing to
Just-
use a portion of it.
Yeah, just,
Can
I
I
mean,
suggest just 20? It's easier.
Well, 20, that's fine.
It makes it easier for Debbie to
Yeah.
remember the number.
I'll
guess-
get it.
I guess the only thing I would throw out there is that while I'm not opposed to a portion or trying to offset the deficit of the fire department, it was recommended to look at all the other things that we have cut or need attention from this body. So before we go and throw excess funds, we need to kind of look at all the other things and prioritize. So
But
I
there's
think
no,
we need to have a
but
discussion.
there's no motion at this point. All he's
Understood.
saying is, are we willing
I'm-
to talk about it and do it?
I'm
I'd say
saying I'm not
certainly.
opposed to
I
talking
think
about
Bob says certainly,
consideration.
Chris.
Yeah,
I mean,
we can talk
yeah.
about it.
Right, I mean, hard numbers.
Yeah.
Hard
I mean, I'm
numbers.
supportive of, let's just get hard numbers.
And just so you know, I know this is just a consensus thing, but talking with Charlene, we're really early in our budget process now to make a budget amendment. Give us 4 months. We just started our audit. We'll be done in October, November. Let us get through our audit. Let us see where we stand before we get too.
You mean at the end of the year? Did we?
No, where we've been for the first 4 months.
Okay.
We haven't, we've just
This is our
approved the budget.
first
Yeah.
real significant number we've gotten yet. We haven't gotten in our big real estate number yet.
Yeah.
I have no idea to know what's gonna happen with income tax money yet.
Yeah, we just don't want to jump
So it's
ahead
too
too
early.
quick.
We don't want to
and
give
without-
this money
and
away
without
and
any
find out we're
figures.
taking a beating
Next
Again,
year-
somewhere.
without
next
any
year, we'll
figures.
be standing
I
around
think
with
Chris
our
Everett said it
hands
with,
out, our pants down.
gotta get some hard numbers.
Don't wanna do
Let
that.
us get through our audit first, see where we're at, and then
I got
if
you.
we can do something, be great.
All right.
We certainly don't want you
Okay.
all short. on
Mayor's
equipment.
report.
Okay, our deep gratitude to the Mount Airy Volunteer Fire Company for hosting Mount Airy Carnival and the essential services they provide to our community every day. Again, we don't want you to be short on the equipment that you need. Thank you to many volunteers that worked so hard to make the carnival possible, and a special thanks to the Mount Airy citizens who came out and supported and had a great time. History 101, don't forget, MAMSA is going to start this off September 7th through the 14th. It's just chock full of events. You can go to mountairymainstreet.org website to see everything that's happening. There'll be Kids Day events, self-guided tour, there'll be Civil War talks over at Pine Grove Chapel. Ben Franklin will be making an arrival, and you'll hear from longtime local citizens such as Mr. Runkles, I think Bob, your wife, just heard from, and then, of course, Oscar Baker and Helen Simpson. Mount Airy Tracks, keep an eye out in your mailbox. This was originally the inaugural edition of Mount Airy Tracks. We mailed that in conjunction with the new recycling brochure. We're trying to get the most bang for our buck. It was in addition to our website, Facebook page, local press, public meetings. Councilman Bob King wanted something that focused primarily on town commissions and those who serve on them. So I think you're going to enjoy this inaugural edition. We'll talk about further editions and what kind of frequency in the future. But a special thanks to our community coordinator and editor, Melissa Hoyle, for working on the project. Back to History 101, I had to throw out a teaser from Mary Beth Rook. Just so you know, somewhere around History 101, Mount Airy citizens may have an opportunity to buy a piece of Mount Airy history. That's all I'm going to say. Recycling containers, with the proliferation of recycling containers around town, unfortunately,
Does it have anything to do with the rain tax?
some of these recycling containers have been used as dumping grounds, unfortunately. So I've reached out, I've had staff reach out to the businesses affected to make sure that these containers go through a planning and zoning process similar to any other outdoor structure. It's kind of ironic I had to bring this up because back when I served on the recycling committee in 2003, I bought the first Plan and Aid container to town. Since then, it's had a lot of babies. There's probably 40 or 50 of them around town, and it's getting to be a bit much. Mount Airy Community Center update, as Chairman Bill Butts mentioned, the mayor, the town, mayor, staff, council, along with representatives of Y, all took a field trip. We plan to schedule another field trip and put together some suggested options for the community center plan for future consideration for council. Maybe we'll get some professional help on that. Also, you'll notice at the front of this table that was originally Bruce Curley's idea to promote some kind of town events or some kind of town outreach at the front of our table. Well, Bruce, it's took a long time, but I hope this can be seen on camera. It's the first time we've done this. But we'll be listing events that are happening in town September, October, November, seasonally. You'll see them out there. And you also see our Facebook page, and you'll see our town website. Again, another way to reach out to the community. You're going to be seeing wanted posters around town. These wanted posters are something that we're doing. Councilman Held is working on this with us, with the Historical Society, MAMSA, myself, Mary Beth Rook. We're putting together a proposal to put historical signs on every property downtown and their usage throughout the years. We're looking for a few pictures because every plaque will have a picture. I think this will be very interesting for the citizens and to keep the rich history alive. You'll see these posters around town. There was a question regarding the town's investment strategy. The email went out today that detailed our investment strategy and responded to the citizen in detail. So I hope that met with your satisfaction. Just so you, I don't know if you're going to touch on this, what a great job we get out of our town staff. We had a water main break. I think originally Councilman Everidge fielded the call from the police, then I got it afterwards, and our town staff worked out in the street till 3 a.m. last night fixing a water main break over by the post office, so got a lot of bang for our buck. The only other issue besides agenda Mount Airy, a while ago I asked Chris to serve as ex officio on the planning commission to bring his experience and get the town water and planning commission working together. For the same reason that Chris has been an invaluable part of that, Scott Strong is a former chair or liaison of the Water Commission. I'd also asked him to be ex officio on water to bring his expertise over to the Water Commission. And hopefully those two commissions can work together as they has been, because water goes hand in hand with planning in the town of Mount Airy, and us working together goes hand in hand. So I'd like to make that announcement. Gems of Mount Airy. Mount Airy is a gem for many reasons. We're one of the few municipalities on a superior groundwater system. I feature a business every month. This month's feature is going to be Mount Airy Center, the Acupuncture Center of Mount Airy. The owner, acupuncturist Amy Green, graduated from the Maryland Institute of Chinese Medicine, studying under the direction of Chinese professors and acupuncturists. She has been licensed for 13 years and in business for 9. She's continued her education in herbology, gynecology, and other related topics. Her services include healthcare screening and the appropriate application of needles. Other techniques include flash fire cupping, moxibustion, and infrared heat to aid in healing. Some people find that this type of treatment is a great alternative to Western treatment, so if you've had issues, you may want to consider it. And it's right here in Mount Airy. You don't have to travel around to Frederick or other places. It's a home-based business, conveniently located right here on 601 South Main Street. Please give Amy a call at 443-865-0600. The Mayor's Community Forums will be held on August 17th and 31st. Invite everybody to drop by Town Hall. Volunteer opportunities exist. We really need people on the Water Commission. Hopefully the newsletter that Bob wants to get out will spur some interest in those commissions. And Bob's going to touch on this, but I had the pleasure of attending an Arts Council event last Saturday night, and if you want to know what's best about a small town, come down to downtown Mount Airy Main Street on one of these Saturday nights. I think it's in 2 weeks, and you will have the best evening that you've had. You'll see what's best about Mount Airy, sitting here on Main Street and enjoying a great free concert. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
You have an appointment.
I have an appointment.
I got you covered, Debbie.
Thank you. Oh, well, and I thought I'd already did this appointment. At the August Council meeting, I'm recommending John Stumeyer to be appointed to the Streets and Roads as an alternative. John currently serves on recycling, sanitation. Sorry to pull him, but he is a police officer. He has extensive police citizen experience. I'm actually going to work him into a position as a coordinator working with me on some police issues. And he'll be invaluable in Streets and Roads in that capacity. We'll get you somebody else.
I will move we accept that. John with a police background, it's a good fit for a lot of Streets and Roads issues.
I'll second it.
Got a second? See, Bob's eager to get him off. He's like,
No, he's not.
I'm just kidding.
No, he's not.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Bob, you want to talk some trash?
Yeah, talking trash. We met with all the downtown business owners and developed some steps to improve the look of the downtown recycling and trash center. The town's going to clean up the center and try to do so on a regular basis. The pad will be paved. We're getting 3 pickups a week out of that center instead of 2 now. And new locks, a new light, and a camera will be coming soon. So we got a lot of good ideas out of, we had meetings with the folks down here, and we got a lot of good ideas about keeping it straight and clean. The Frederick County Department of Solid Waste Management will be having a scrap tire drop-off day at the Reichsford Road facility on Saturday, September the 28th, 7:30 a.m. till 2:30 p.m. Maximum 10 tires per vehicle. So if you have old tires sitting around your yard with plants growing out of them and stuff, now's the time.
So I assume from that you can't normally take tires over there?
No, well, they charge you. This
Okay.
would be no charge.
Okay.
Larry, how many tires do you have?
10 per
So
vehicle.
That just means a couple carloads.
3
right?
cars.
Yeah, so, get Mary and the kids to drive over there with a couple in the car.
And the Larry's tires are coming from the rails to.
Rails to trails. We should take care of those.
And
I got at least 10.
our next meeting is September the 18th, 7 o'clock at Town Hall. That's a Wednesday night. The Mount Airy Arts Council, they currently have a show on display here in Town Hall, and it's going to remain up through August the 17th. You ought to get down here and see it. It is a great show. Saturday nights, 7 to 9, we have music in the courtyards next to Town Hall. I was happy to see the mayor there. Chairman Butt's there. Mr. Hushhour has performed. We've had some classical music. We've had oboe. it's been a very interesting and great music. It's rather shocking how
You had
good
some
the
blues
music is.
guitar and saxophone
Yeah,
combo.
blues guitar and saxophone combo, jazz last week, and it was great. On the 17th, we have Eddie Brooks and his band Sidewalk Mule will be playing bluegrass. On August the 24th, Mike Cavalier will be here to play a little bit of rock and roll. And that's their next meeting. The Arts Council's next meeting is August the 14th, right here, Town Hall, 7:30. And I want to say, go to camp night this coming Saturday night.
It's the 10th anniversary, I think.
Yes, go to camp night this coming Saturday night. I'm sure Larry has something awesome prepared for us. And, you know, I'll cook you a hot dog.
You got some books to hand out?
Yes, and I do have some books here, for all those that are planning on attending. Did we schedule
Yes.
is that scheduled for the 18th of September?
I don't know the date, but it's been scheduled. We shot it out.
It's been scheduled.
Oh, I don't know.
Those are the required reading for the course.
Pass this down to council.
He doesn't need one either.
It's the people that don't need
This is
it, that
too
need to
light,
read
you know.
it the most.
I mean, if I throw it at somebody, it won't really hit them that hard, Bob. That's not what good is it?
And don't give me two. One
Here,
will be
please,
sufficient.
please.
How come I end up with 3?
There's actually-
Well, Bob, what do I gotta say?
Question with these books, I read the email going around about us inviting a town citizen to come to the meeting. Does that now mean that it's open to all citizens of the
Absolutely
town?
not. The email clearly said it was a one-time exception.
That was a special guest star, I
That's a
thought.
special guest. It was clearly written in the email.
And I will get that special guest his copy.
Give him his copy.
May I just ask why the special guest was given an invitation?
Yeah, it went through, actually, the way this came about was very scientific and calculated. He asked me. So I said yes.
Yeah, arguably, if the council's there, we have to let anybody in.
Okay.
So arguably, anybody could come sit in on the session. I think I talked to Debbie, we're gonna issue a press release and the whole 9 yards.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Well,
as if-
in the future, let me know about that, so I just know what's happening.
Oh.
Yeah, I have no problem with it.
Well, she'll hand you the press release when she does it.
Yeah, but Bob and I are scheduling the class, and if we're doing things like that.
Right, yeah.
Doing things like that, the mayor's doing it, let it go through my office. I'd appreciate that.
There's more than 2 of you there,
Well,
3 of you there.
Whenever there's more than 3 council members, we try and issue, just to,
Absolutely,
not that, just to say, if anybody wants to show up, we're there, it is open.
Right.
Well, if you'd like
Even
to
though it's
keep it
not-
private, I'm sure some of us would stand down for the next session.
No,
I'm just throwing it out there. I know, I'm civil.
That's
I was
it,
giving
you know,
others the
and we didn't-
opportunity.
see,
I'm
we
going.
didn't have to do that for the tour of the facilities, because only Bob and I were there.
That's true.
Right.
Were you
So-
civil to each other?
Reasonably.
Yeah, Peter did some good things for me. I remember that.
All right, Parks and Rec beautification. David?
Okay, camp night is August 10th. They are going to be showing the movie Babe. They're going to have a Dutch oven cook-off, and they're going to have the music by Slim Harrison. Pre-registration for this event is at Town Hall by August 8th. I would suggest anybody that's never been to a camp night, show up. It's actually a fun time. The platform has been poured for the Watkins Park water fountain, so that should be going in very shortly. And then on the beautification front, they have a work day scheduled as of August 16th at Vest Pocket Park. If you're interested in coming out, contact Town Hall, and they'll get you in contact with Mary Hushauer, who is the chair of the commission.
Thanks. Planning, EDC.
Okay, thank you. EDC, we didn't have a meeting this month. The next EDC meeting will be 8/24 at 7 PM here in Town Hall. For P&Z, we ended up having our meeting on this past 29th. We discussed the master plan, specifically Chapter 4. There's 2 work sessions upcoming for the 12th and the 17th at 7 PM. It'll be focusing on wrapping up or trying to wrap up a majority of the master plan. During the meeting, we accepted the amended site plan for the Watkins Building as directed. We approved 4 sign permits, the barbershop coming to town, Jersey Mike's, IHOP, which is making good progress, and Luxury Spa and Nail.
I saw that. Where are we getting the Jersey Mike's?
Yeah. In that empty
Okay.
space
All
where they
right.
split
Where
the liquor
used to be.
store.
All right.
What's Jersey Mike?
Like a sub shop.
Yeah, it's like a sub shop.
Awesome.
We discussed ordinance 2013-4 that's going to be coming up. It was voted against, and a unfavorable opinion is being sent to council. The next meeting for P and Z is on the 30th at 7 PM, and that concludes my reports.
All right. Streets and roads. We had a under-attended but still fruitful meeting where we looked at a lot of good options that Jennifer Smith brought forward to the commission about changes to Buffalo Road. That was the bulk of our discussion. Some really good ideas, like, putting the big numbers on the street that say 25 mile per hour, that you actually paint on the pavement. So as people are coming into town, it kind of, smacks them in the face and says, hey, you're coming into town, you need to slow down. Because you don't really think about it. You've been out there on Buffalo Road, you're driving in the country, you're flying, and you don't really think you're in town until you get right in here to Main Street. And we want to try and slow people down earlier. So she had some suggestions for signs, some paint changes, some other things like that, which our staff is going to look into implementing and looking into the pricing and how much we can do it, and whether we can get it in the budgets that we have already. So we're moving forward on that. Our next meeting is set for August 22nd at 7:30 in this room. Water and sewer.
Water sewer, we have a small matter about a rain tax. I got a small presentation.
You've had all your time, folks.
Just briefly, I'll yield to Dick. Dick will give you an update on something we're working on.
We're working on an ordinance, and we've already sent some draft material over to the town attorney on FOG, which is fats, oils, and grease, and regulations, proposed regulations, how businesses that have grease traps would have to monitor and provide documentation that they are in compliance with certain requirements for cleaning those traps to mitigate the possibility of getting fats, oils, and grease in the sewer system, and most notably causing a significant backup. So that's in the hands of Tom. He's going to come back with in some wording in legal form, and then it'll be submitted to the council, hopefully by September's meeting. And we meet this Wednesday, every first Wednesday of the month, 7 o'clock, right here.
Thanks, Dick.
Thanks. All right. Monica?
The only thing I wanted to say that Pat didn't cover is we updated our website recently. Our front page is refreshed, and we're working on an interactive calendar that's kind of needs to be tweaked a little bit, but just asking for comments, yes, no, we like it, we don't like it.
Nice.
So that we can, keep developing it as we go along. But Melissa had a huge amount of work in that. She did a great job working with our website administrator, so we're going to chug along.
Over the last month, I've been working quite a bit on Rails to Trails with Larry and others on that. As you all know, the Town View proposal, which I'll report to you all on a little later, the Shyman property, again, which I'll report to you all on in a little bit, as well as some other issues. On Harrison LaShear, as you know, we've been back and forth with principally now 2 documents, and essentially they sent to us their changes, and now I've developed what I think are changes to their changes that reflect what I think latest consensus has been, subject to y'all's comments to me. I guess one thing I want to stress is that these are not the final documents. What the agreements will be, we don't know. It's simply a consensus between the 2 parties, the town and IDA, on what the initial documents should look like when they are put out for public comment. So, These aren't final documents by any stretch of the imagination. So that's where we are, and hopefully, after tonight's session together, we can get those documents back to IDA and begin to move forward from there.
Peter, a comment or more of a question to the council. We've been working for not quite a while, but over a period of time on Liza Harrison. I've talked to a lot of folks in the community, and folks really don't know much about it. And I mean, ultimately, whether we annex the land or not, I mean, my perspective is based on what the community wants. How do we, or have we thought about starting to get the information out about what Liza Harrison is, what it might do for us? Because, well, yeah, market it and inform. Do we have, is it a planning function? Is it a, I mean, how?
Well, I think to answer that from a planning perspective, we can start planning once we know what it is.
Right.
We all know what it is.
But we gotta get the base agreement down to know what exactly the deal is.
A series
and
of
then-
public hearings.
Yeah,
We don't,
right.
they don't, basically you have to have a design concept before you can move forward.
And that's what we're
We
trying
don't
to come
even
up
have
with.
that yet.
Okay, but I mean, at a 100,000-foot level, it's, the lower part becomes a business park,
Maybe.
Right, yeah.
because that's what the county wants, and the
Yep.
upper part
Yep.
becomes rec.
parks.
Becomes rock. And one of the big impacts to the town,
It's simple,
it's pretty simple.
parks,
Parks,
business
business
park,
park.
water.
Yeah, water. So, and then one of the big impacts, goes to say is clearly traffic on 27. So I'm not looking at all the legalese and the planning and the concept and whether it's a baseball field or a hockey field or a runway, so I can land a plane on it. But it's, hey, community, here's what we're thinking about. So, I mean, maybe something we post on the town website to say, conceptually, here's what the town's been working on, if you have any questions, concerns. I think it's important to get the word out, start to get the word out so folks consider the idea.
Always, I mean, Councilman King just did the inaugural edition here of this Mount Airy Tracks. We have public meetings, people are hearing about it now. We have the local press, we have our Facebook page. We'll put a blurb out, but again, I think Councilman Helt and Councilman Strong were both correct. We have to have something to put out there, but we can't just put out there that it is being explored. I mean, it has been out there, but I'd rather over notify than under. So very good point, Councilman Everidge. We'll get something out there, and then as soon as we know that it has the potential to move forward, and that's what I think we're gonna discuss tonight and have been discussing.
Right.
Then we're actually gonna have formal scheduled town meetings.
Yep.
To get, so people can come out and voice.
Right, but I guess my point is, I'd like us to publicize this as much as possible before we get to that formal meeting perspective. Hey, everybody, here's what we're thinking of doing. We're gonna have formal meetings, but start to consider the idea and the concept, because the concept's there.
But shouldn't we have an idea of what it is
My-
before we throw it out there with?
My concern is probably along yours, it starts to get out there and then somebody starts going against it for something that's not really part of it.
Yeah.
Because
Even,
we don't
at
know.
worst, I'll give an example. The Pank property right now, everybody goes big box, and, then you've got everybody jumping up and down, and who's to say that's the final plan? Because he's still trying to figure out what he can do and can't do. Likewise with this property, and that's why I said maybe, when you're talking about, we're gonna have half park and half business park type thing, that's not finalized. We don't know yet, because I've seen 4 different incantations where they're sizing different pieces to do different things.
I think we can find a happy medium for all. I hear Councilman Everidge's concern, I hear your concerns. How about we put together a draft, we'll put together a draft, send it out to you all, and see if it probably meets both of your needs without saying
Just
we're actually.
some kind of real basic.
Real
If
basic.
somebody wants to
that's
know
all I'm saying.
something,
Yeah.
Very, very basic.
something real
Okay.
basic on the website that says,
We're gonna
Here's what it
bifurcate
is,
the
here's where
land.
we are.
We're gonna bifurcate the land.
Bifurcate again. So, yeah, so we'll send out a draft, see what y'all think.
all right,
before
sounds
we
good.
shoot it out. And again, there will be public hearings. Make that very clear.
Hey, Peter, one thing I did forget to say, tomorrow here in the council room, okay, a bunch of students and
Oh, yeah.
some other folks are stuffing those newsletters in the envelopes and addressing them and all that kind of stuff. They can use all the help they can get. So if there's any commission members out there, or any kids, or any lonely housewives
service
that want
hours.
to get in here and help out, help out.
Did they get the printing done today?
I think we're gonna have them tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Mary
And
said.
I will say,
Mary's-
Mary and Melissa and I, Melissa and Mary did a lot of hard work, but
Right.
I sat down with them and we went through the weights, and Melissa came up with a good, because it weighed
Right
And
at the
we-
max,
Well, no, it was over.
was it?
Yeah, when they put that, well, I said to Mary, I said, did you weigh it with the stickers and the staples and everything? And we put it on, it was over.
Don't tell.
But that was like an extra $700, you know, in
Right.
postage. So I sat down with them and they did a great job, you know, working, you know, what can we pull out of here? And finally, Melissa took the one sheet, you'll see them in there, that was top and bottom, and she put it on half and half, so with a half sheet in there, we're now underweight.
Right.
So they went in there with the cutter and they turned what was a front sheet, made it a back and a front half sheet, and cut them all in there so that we can save that money. Town staff did a great job. We were thinking we were gonna have to leave the staple out, but we finally, I mean, let me tell you, it was right on the edge. I mean, we kept putting it on there, it's over, it's over. But they did a great job getting that down, and Melissa with reworking that document, so it's on a
Right.
half page now.
But there's stuff in those envelopes, $3,500 envelopes tomorrow, so if you got nothing to do, be here or be square.
All right, is there, we got the code enforcement report, is there any other business?
Last question on code enforcement report. The abandoned property on the Ridgeville,
Yes,
where the fire was,
yes.
it's been abandoned for a long time?
Two things. The county has been out there. Did we get his final report back from the county? And we did have a blight ordinance on the agenda for tonight. We pulled it because one of the reasons we pulled it, we don't want any extra unnecessary ordinances in the town of Mount Airy. We did just recently learn, and I'm surprised it took this long, that we do have some standing with the county to bring them in to address some of these issues. One of them includes boarding up those properties. So we're going to see what's currently available to us through the county and state before we enact yet another ordinance. However, if there are loopholes or places where we need another ordinance, we will bring one forward, because at Maryland Municipal League, I think Scott was in
That
that
was a
class.
good class.
You
That
were
was
in that
good, too.
class. Well, there was maybe 70 people in the class, and 2 of them raised their hand that we didn't have a blight ordinance. Mount Airy was one of them.
Did they
So
just abandon the property?
that was a little, I wouldn't say too much about the property owner, but you did talk to him?
I talked to him
Okay.
today, and he has plans on doing something.
Is this the old hair salon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I've actually received citizen complaints, and you got busted with it. It
Yeah, it
needs
is
to be
busted
addressed.
up.
It needs to be addressed, and it's been too long.
broken into repeatedly.
When people are living there, it needs to be addressed. It's been too long. And that's one of the reasons that drove that blight ordinance that right after we sent, but the county's been out there this month, so we're diligently working on that, and it's a good question.
I will move the bills be paid.
I'll second it.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, I'm going to, Debbie, do I have the checkoff sheet? Okay. I'm gonna move that we go into a closed session. Second. Well, let me read what it is. According to, consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter and to consider the acquisition of real property for a public purpose. The topics of those will be resident trooper program, Harrison Leisure, as well as Tom announced the various rail trail options. And that was seconded by Scott. And Scott, I'm gonna second move along with that as soon as we're done with the closed session, that we're automatically adjourned, so we don't have to go back into open session. You seconding that too, Scott? Okay. I will, Blaze?
Aye.
Everidge?
Aye.